subscribe, like the video, and, if possible, join Patreon. But if you don't have much money, you can support the channel by watching the novels on euroaudiobooks.com. Remember that you can participate in the polls so that your favorite novel gets published for free.
Synopsis. After traveling through the wizarding world, Ivan got a point-adding system. So, Harry, savior? I just want to be an Auror working for Ivan. Neville, boss, who are you going to kill next? Dumbledore, the Dark Lord is already the second generation. Is it okay for me to train a White Lord? Hermione, my Ivan is so good. Proud.jpg. Many years later, looking at the increasingly magical Hogwarts, an older woman sighed. In the years when I was a teacher, Hogwarts became the world's #1 magic school. From this, it can be seen that Minerva McGonagall, I am the best teacher in Hogwarts. Chapter 1, The Silent One. In the orphanage in the early morning of London, the fog was hazy. A boy about 11 years old walked in the wet courtyard. His name was Ivan Ambrosius. Should it be coming? Ivan had been looking forward to this day for 10 years since he came to this world. He walked to the mailbox, took out the letters inside, and then checked them one by one with the expectation of winning the prize. Still nothing. Not long after, Ivan sighed slightly, and a hint of loss appeared between his eyebrows. Hogwarts admission letter. Yes, Hogwarts admission letter. Ivan is not from this world. He's a time traveler. 10 years ago, he traveled through time and became a baby abandoned in front of an orphanage. Mrs. Mina, the director of the orphanage, took him in and used the inscription Ambrosius on a ring left in the cradle as Ivan's surname. This ring also became the only clue to the identity of the child that Ivan traveled through. Of course, Ivan was not so interested in his own life experience, because this is exactly the identity that the system arranged for him when he traveled to this world. That's right, as a traveler, Ivan has a system. System, open the attributes. As Ivan silently thought, a virtual panel appeared in front of him. Ivan Ambrosius, 11 years old, race, wizard gender, male bloodline, Ambrosius family talent, transfiguration magus, prophecy magus, silent, attributes 1 ordinary, 2 excellent, 3 outstanding, 4 rare, 5 legend, 6 apocalypse, 7 miracle, soul, 3 magic, 5 constitution, 1 thinking, 3 mind, 2 will, 2 current potential points. 0 Ivan's system has no name, no intelligence, and will not answer any of Ivan's questions. To this day, Ivan has not even figured out how to obtain potential points. The only thing that makes Ivan feel a little relieved is that the system gave him a novice benefit at the beginning of the journey. Wizard Blood Extraction Scroll, unique. Effect. After use, you can randomly obtain the blood of an ancient wizard family and help complete the host's identity information in the current world. In this way, Ivan used the Wizard Blood Extraction Scroll and extracted a family called Ambrosius. At the same time, the system also thoughtfully helped him complete his identity, and he was no longer a person who appeared out of thin air. However, Ivan was not interested in the parents, family, and why this body was abandoned. He is him, and only him. Even if the system arranges an identity, Ivan will not recognize 2 strangers as parents. For Ivan, it's good now. The feeling of loss flashed in his heart, which made the mist around Ivan begin to shake slightly, and even the ground under his feet began to break, revealing red cracks like magma, steaming up hazy water mist. Calm down. Almost at the same time, Ivan took a deep breath. Keep calm, calm down. Gradually, the vision disappeared, and the looming, terrifying power was appeased by him. It's getting stronger and stronger. As shown on the system panel, a terrible power called Obscurus grew in Ivan's body. What is Obscurus? Ivan, who had watched the first and second parts of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, had searched for the settings of this powerful magic. When some young wizards suffered great psychological trauma due to magic, they would suppress their magical power out of self-defense instinct. Due to lack of guidance, they did not learn to harness and control their own power, thus deriving a parasite, the dark magical power Obscurus. Over the years, whenever Ivan's emotions fluctuated, whether it was joy or sadness, Obscurus would become restless, trying to rush out of Ivan's body and wantonly vent the magic power that had been suppressed for many years in the outside world. To be honest, Ivan had no idea why he became an obscurus. The director of his orphanage, Mrs. Mina, was a kind and gentle old woman who took good care of Ivan. Having lived 2 lives, Ivan showed a different intelligence from other children. This made Ivan's relationship with others very good, and there was no tragic childhood of being bullied and isolated. But even in such an environment, Ivan still became as silent at the age of 5. The only possibility Ivan could think of was his excessive magic power. Current attributes: soul, 3, excellent, magic, 5, legendary, physique, 1, ordinary, thinking, 3, excellent, mind, 2, excellent, will, 2, excellent, 5 points of magic power, which was evaluated as legendary by the system. According to Ivan's summary over the years, the attribute here is not his current physical fitness, but a direct display of potential and talent. The so-called 5 points of magic power means that Ivan has a legendary level of magic power growth. I have to admit that Ivan underestimated the power of the ancient wizard bloodline of Ambrosius. Originally, he thought that 5 points of magic power was just so, and at best it would be stronger than ordinary wizards. But he was wrong. Ivan didn't know how the potential points in the system were calculated. But the magic riot brought by 5 points of magic completely exceeded his understanding of the magic of wizards in the Harry Potter world. In his memory, the most powerful character in the Harry Potter world should be Aurelius Dumbledore in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. That is, the obscure Credence in the movie. The scene of a magic bullet blowing up half a mountain thousands of meters away is still fresh in Ivan's memory today. Ivan has a feeling that once he completely lets go of the suppression of the obscurus in his body, he can easily achieve the destructive power of Credence in Fantastic Beasts 1. You know, Ivan is only 11 years old now, and Credence in Fantastic Beasts 1 is already 18. If the 2 blood talents of Metamorphosis Magus and Prophecy Magus are also counted, Ivan has truly experienced the power of the surname Ambrosius. Metamorphosis gives Ivan the ability to change his appearance at will. Without the need for spells or polyjuice potion, Ivan can become anyone he has ever seen. Yes, anyone, ignoring age, physique, appearance, and even gender, as long as Ivan wants. He can complete the transformation in the blink of an eye. The only drawback is that Ivan's transformation objects are limited to humans. Tonks in the original book also has the ability of metamorphosis. It's just that the metamorphosis of the 2 is different. Ivan can't change into a pig's nose or a duck's mouth like Tonks, but he can change his body's shape, height, and gender. In terms of human transformation, Ivan's metamorphosis is better than Tonks. Of course, metamorphosis is not without flaws. That is, if he becomes a half-giant or half-succubus like Hagrid and Fleur, he can only maintain a similar appearance at most, but cannot obtain the characteristics of the 2. However, Ivan had a feeling that his Metamorphosis Magus had not yet reached its limit. If I go deeper, I may be able to break this limit. Thinking of this, Ivan's eyes suddenly swept across the glass window beside him. At this moment, with the blurred reflection of the window, Ivan saw a picture. It was a pure white owl with a letter tied to its feet, and a boy who looked exactly like Ivan was opening the window and welcoming it in with a smile. Soon, these pictures disappeared from the window. I have to say that Prophecy Magus is really convenient. Another blood gift of the Ambrosius family is called Prophecy Magus. Ivan only knew that one person had this ability, and that was Gellert Grindelwald, Dumbledore's old lover. Speaking of which, it seems that Grindelwald also has these 2 abilities of mine. Ivan remembered that in the movie, Grindelwald could perform human transformation without relying on polyjuice potion, in addition to the same ability of Prophecy Magus. Ivan had speculated whether the Ambrosius family had any relationship with Grindelwald. There was no way. The blood talents of the 2 were too similar, and Ivan could not help but think wildly. Let's go back first. Grindelwald and the like are too far away from me. Although Ivan was a time traveler, he wanted to travel in this magical world and explore the mysteries and origins of magic rather than stir up trouble in the wizarding world. The most important thing was that Ivan had to find a way to solve the Obscurus. This thing was a time bomb. Ivan didn't want to become the next Credence and eventually die from the erosion of the Obscurus. Like Credence, he had lived past the age of 10 and could suppress and control the Obscurus in his body to a certain extent, turning it into his own strength. However, Ivan could also feel the pressure that the Obscurus brought to his body. 5 points of magic power not only brought Ivan powerful magical power, but also provided high-quality nutrients for the growth of the Obscurus. I will become stronger, and Obscurus will grow up. If this continues, sooner or later, Ivan will be killed by Obscurus. Fortunately, Ivan had predicted some of his future. The most distant picture is that Ivan grows into a teenager of 16 or 17 years old, with a prefect badge on his chest. Ivan knows that the prefect of Hogwarts needs to be a fifth-year wizard. This means that Ivan can live healthy until he is at least 15 years old. 5 years should be enough for me to find a solution to Obscurus. With this idea in mind, Ivan handed the letter to the staff of the orphanage, then greeted Mrs. Mina and returned to his room on the 3rd floor. Knock, knock, knock. About half an hour later, there was a knock on the window. Ivan turned his head and saw the predicted owl, which brought him the admission notice of Hogwarts. Thank you for your hard work. Ivan opened the window and welcomed the owl in. The snow-white owl flapped its wings in the room, then slowly landed on Ivan's desk and stretched out the leg with the letter tied to it. Ivan took the letter off, then broke up the half-eaten bread on the cabinet and sprinkled it on the table. You're welcome. Eat it. Coo. The owls in the wizarding world are quite spiritual. It turned its head and rubbed it on Ivan's palm intimately, then lowered its head, buried it in the breadcrumbs, and began to eat. Cute little guy. Ivan smiled slightly. He turned over the envelope and saw a wax seal and a shield emblem on the back of the envelope. The capital H was surrounded by a lion, an eagle, a badger, and a snake. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry Principal. Albus Dumbledore, President of the International Confederation of Wizards, First Class Grand Wizard of the Order of Merlin, Chief Wizard of the Wisengamot. Dear Mr. Ambrosius, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted to study at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Attached is a list of required books and equipment. The semester is scheduled to start on September 1st. In view of your special situation, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry will send someone to your residence to answer your questions and provide due assistance. Vice Principal Minerva McGonagall sincerely. After reading the contents of the letter, Ivan smacked his lips. I wonder which Professor Hogwarts will send over. Ding. The host has received the Hogwarts admission letter and is awarded with free potential points X1. The system prompt sounded in his mind, and Ivan almost thought he was hallucinating. FK. Ivan's sudden shouting almost frightened the owl who was eating and made it fall off the table. Sorry. Fortunately, the owl is professional, and this situation is not the first time in the past years. There are always little wizards from Muggle families who scream and shout because of the admission notice that is like a prank. System. Ivan called the system in his heart, but unfortunately did not get any response. In desperation, Ivan had to silently recite, open the attribute bar, and sure enough, he saw that there was one new potential point on the potential point that was originally 0. Without thinking about how to use this potential point, Ivan suppressed his excitement in his heart to prevent Mo Ran from taking the opportunity to rebel, and then quickly wrote a reply. Are you full? Seeing the owl raise its head, Ivan touched its head and tied the reply letter to its leg. Coo, the owl enjoyed Ivan's touch. It called to Ivan happily a few times, then flew out of the window and disappeared in the mist of dawn. Seeing that the matter was over, Ivan breathed a sigh of relief. He glanced at his attribute list. Attributes soul, 3+ magic, 5 constitution, 1+ thinking, 3+ mind, 2+ will, 2+ current potential points. 6 major attributes. Except for magic, the other 5 attributes have a symbol that can be added. System. Why can't magic continue to be added? The magic power that Ivan now has is actually beyond the scope of what he can control, and it is silently the burden brought by too much magic. Magic power upgrade failed. Lack of experience value. Experience value? Ivan didn't know where this thing came from. To increase the attribute from 5 to 6 experience points are needed, although I don't know the difference between 6 points of magic and 1 point of magic. According to the system's evaluation, 6 points of attributes are Apocalypse, and 5 points are Legend. Apocalypse and Legend, just looking at them, is difficult to understand the difference. But now is not the time to think about these things. The most urgent task is to think about how to use the new potential points. Chapter 2 Prophecy Magus. I don't know what the limit of attribute points is, maybe 7 or even higher. The number 7 is magical in the Harry Potter world. Voldemort's 7 Horcruxes, such as the 7 Weasley brothers and sisters, 7 Quidditch players, 7 grades at Hogwarts, 7 Galleon wands, 7 main courses, etc. If 9 is the extreme number in other worlds, then here, 7 is the symbol of magic and mystery. Assuming that the 6 major attributes can only be added up to 7 points, I now have 16 attribute points, 26 points away from the highest 42 points. In this way, how to use the attribute points needs to be carefully considered. Ivan's idea is that 10 birds in the forest are not as good as 1 bird in the hand. Instead of dividing the potential points equally and making yourself a bucket warrior, it is better to focus on a few attributes as much as possible. Having played games in his previous life, Ivan knows the importance of career choice. My highest attribute now is magic. The second is soul and thinking, which have reached 3 points. The 3-point attribute is evaluated as outstanding by the system. Ivan is not sure what the extraordinary soul is for, but the extraordinary thinking has given Ivan a memory, calculation ability, and reaction ability far beyond that of ordinary people. Speaking of memory alone, Ivan can generally remember everything he has seen in a short period of time. He has tested that he can read a 10,000-word paper in a very short time and recite it word for word. The disadvantage is that this shorthand does not last long and can only last for 1 day at most. If it is more, the memory will be biased. Of course, Ivan can read it several times or review it frequently, so that the knowledge can be firmly imprinted in his mind. By analogy, if ordinary people can achieve this level with only 3 points of thinking, then the value of this attribute point is really extraordinary. At least the shorthand brought by 3 points of thinking is already quite exaggerated, second only to the legendary photographic memory. If I'm not mistaken, if the thinking reaches 4 points, there's a high probability that you will gain the ability to remember everything you see. This is just a reflection of memory. For more, Ivan needs to try it himself to get the exact result. System, add points. Ivan added the new potential points to the soul attribute. Ivan has considered improving the soul attribute. His current priority is to control the magic power in his body and solve the death threat brought by MOMO Ran. Among the 6 attributes, the soul is placed in the first position by the system, which shows its importance. Add points successfully. Soul, 34. Ivan looked at the information feedback he received. He first felt himself and found that there were no changes as he imagined. Strange. Ivan opened his attribute panel. Attribute soul, 4 rare, magic, 5 legendary, physique, 1 ordinary, thinking, 3 outstanding, mind, 2 excellent, will, 2 excellent, current potential points. 0. The 4-point soul attribute is evaluated as rare by the system. Ivan does not believe that improving soul talent will be meaningless. After all, no matter which world, the soul is the most mysterious thing. Not to mention that this is the Harry Potter world. How important the soul is self-evident. According to Ivan's guess, his prophecy talent is likely related to the soul attribute. The stronger the soul, the stronger the perception, and the accuracy and clarity of the predicted picture will also be improved. Just like now, Ivan looked at a small mirror placed on the bedside table with a sudden inspiration, and at the same time thought about which faculty member Hogwarts would send to guide him. The next moment, the picture in the mirror began to change, and an old woman wearing square glasses and dark green robes appeared. Professor McGonagall. Ivan recognized her identity almost immediately. She was the professor of transfiguration, Minerva McGonagall. Can I predict accurately? Ivan's eyes flashed with surprise. His previous predictions were basically passive reception, rather than purposeful vision of the future. But with the improvement of soul attributes, Ivan clearly felt the controllability of the ability of prophecy magus. Of course, this controllability also has certain limitations. Destiny is not something that Ivan can peek at will. Predicting the future is like staring into the abyss. If you're not careful, you may be backlashed. Those who play with fate will eventually be played by fate. In the dark, Ivan got such a revelation, which made him know what rules to follow for this ability of directional prediction. First, the prediction result cannot be changed. Second, you cannot easily tell your fate. Third, be cautious in predicting the future related to yourself. These 3 points are Ivan's intuition or inspiration, which gives him the key to avoid the backlash of fate. Ivan can understand the second and third points. Prediction is like fortune telling. It is natural that you cannot tell others easily. In addition, fortune tellers usually do not tell fortunes for themselves, just like doctors do not treat themselves, because that will bring great pressure to themselves and cause them to be in a state of panic. Although the second and third rules have certain limitations, they are not absolute. Not easily means that you can predict for others when necessary. Avoiding prediction means that in some decisive events, Ivan can avoid disasters in advance. What Ivan really cares about is the first of the 3 rules. The predicted results cannot be changed. Sure enough, the time in the Harry Potter world is one way. Ivan remembered the time converter in Harry Potter 3, which confirmed this point. When you travel through time, no matter what changes you make, you are only completing a period of history, not changing the past. Similarly, the power of fate is so strong. Just look at how Voldemort stared at Harry until his death. One is destined to die in the hands of the other. The 2 saviors, Harry and Neville, can both be seen as the one who killed Voldemort. But in Ivan's view, it is better to say that Voldemort died in the ending planned for him by fate rather than dying at the hands of others. Thinking about it this way, the power of fate is terrifying. Ivan didn't dare to go into it any further. And with his current knowledge and power, he was not qualified to think about such unfathomable questions about fate and time. Fortunately, Ivan is not a stubborn person. Since the rules of this world are like this, he will naturally not bite the bullet and fight against it. When the soul is upgraded to level 4, you can accurately predict the future you want to know. As for the inability to change, Ivan never believed in it. In his opinion, if you can't do it, you're not strong enough. When the soul continues to upgrade, you may be able to get a glimpse of the true face of fate. Thinking of this, Ivan's sight suddenly caught some strange particles like dust. Ivan was stunned for a moment. He looked around and found that there were many fluorescent lights floating in the air where there was nothing. What is this? Magic elements. Subconsciously, Ivan thought of the elements in nature mentioned in every Western fantasy novel. But when Ivan focused his attention on these light spots, his sight suddenly began to magnify like a microscope until he could see the true face of the fluorescent dust. They were strange creatures with wings and butterfly wings like elves. But compared to the cuteness of elves, they were more like mosquitoes like butterflies. What are they? Ivan waved his hand and dusted them, and found that he could not affect them at all. Every time he drove away a wave, another wave would come around. And there were not only these little bugs, but also many other strange creatures, such as a small beast with curved horns, fur all over, and bubbles constantly coming out of its nose. When Ivan saw it, he inexplicably felt a little sleepy, which made him look away quickly. Ivan was sure that these strange creatures he suddenly saw must be the byproduct of his soul being upgraded to level 4. He closed his eyes and tried to calm down as much as possible. Take a deep breath. And as Ivan opened his eyes again, the fantasy scene in his sight really disappeared. Just as I thought, this kind of sight can be controlled. Ivan thought for a moment and called the previous state the soul perspective, which can see some scenes that ordinary people cannot perceive. So, could those just now be microorganisms in the magic world? Ivan felt that his guess was probably right. Since there are magical animals in this world, it means that in addition to humans, other creatures may also have magic power. The scope of creatures is by no means limited to animals and plants, but also includes various microorganisms. According to this inference, Humans can find bacteria, viruses, and water bears. So are there corresponding magical animals living in the invisible world and the magic world? The little flying insects like butterflies and the little curve-horned beasts with bubbles on their noses. In fact, there are more, but Ivan took a quick glance and failed to appreciate the full picture of that fantasy world. The magic in Harry Potter may not be a big deal in terms of destructive power, but in other aspects, Ivan can only say that the water in this world is really deep. Transfiguration that breaks the law of conservation of matter, various spells that almost make your wish come true, and the time converter in the 3rd grade, the traceless telescopic spell that can change space. This is just what has appeared in novels and movies. Not to mention that Ivan is in a real world, and the things in movies and novels are just the tip of the iceberg compared to it. A magical world? Ivan looked at the owl that was getting smaller and smaller in the sky, and his lips curled up slightly. I'm really looking forward to it more and more. Chapter 3. Giving McGonagall a little prophecy shock with the expectation of Professor McGonagall, Ivan spent a few more days in the orphanage. No unexpected situation happened. Everything was as peaceful as usual. That day, a figure appeared at the door of the orphanage. It was Professor McGonagall that Ivan predicted a few days ago. Seeing someone visiting, the children who were playing in the orphanage stopped immediately. They began to tidy up their clothes and try their best to show their best side to each other. Obviously, the children regarded Professor McGonagall as their hope to leave the orphanage. Professor McGonagall tried not to let herself see those poor children. She walked straight to the building in the orphanage and happened to see the young girl who was cleaning. "Good morning. I have an appointment with Mrs. Mina here. Is she there?" The young girl saw someone visiting and quickly brought Mrs. Mina over. Mrs. Mina was a kind old woman about 60 years old. She was thin, with white hair, and her eyes were full of surprise in her reading glasses. "Hello." Mrs. Mina didn't remember who she had met before. "Excuse me, who are you?" "I'm the vice principal of Hogwarts School, Minerva McGonagall. I think you should have known it, right?" Professor McGonagall was very capable and had prepared all kinds of information with confusion spells cast on it early in the morning about Mr. Ambrosius's admission to our school. Mrs. Mina took the information and was stunned at first, then said happily, yes, but I didn't expect that you, as the vice principal, would come here in person. We occasionally provide necessary guidance to children with excellent talents." Professor McGonagall took back the information. In fact, there was nothing written on these materials, almost like a blank sheet of paper. But in the eyes of muggles like Mrs. Mina, these materials contain all aspects and can perfectly dispel any doubts in her heart. "Excuse me, can I see Mr. Ambrosius now?" "Oh, of course." Mrs. Mina treated Professor McGonagall as a distinguished guest and enthusiastically took her to Ivan's room. Along the way, Madame Mina praised Ivan generously. In her words, Ivan was a kind and intelligent child. Not only was he well-behaved and sensible, he also often took care of younger brothers and sisters in the orphanage, sharing a lot of pressure for the volunteers. "Your school will not regret choosing little Ivan." Listening to Madame Mina's praise, Professor McGonagall was not impatient at all. She was a very responsible teacher. If she could get more information about Ivan, she could guide him better and help him adapt to life in the magic world as soon as possible. "Okay, this is little Ivan's room." Madame Mina called twice. Ivan opened the door, and Professor McGonagall's figure immediately came into view. After finishing her work, Madame Mina turned and left, leaving the space for the two. "Hello, Professor McGonagall." Ivan naturally invited Professor McGonagall into the room, and then poured her a cup of tea. "Sorry, I only have boiled water here." "It's okay." Professor McGonagall looked at Ivan with some confusion. "Sorry, you seem to know me?" Rather than knowing, it's better to say that I knew in advance. Ivan sat opposite Professor McGonagall and said, "According to the description in the admission letter I received, Hogwarts School is a magic school?" "Yes." Professor McGonagall nodded and said, "I am the vice principal of Hogwarts, Minerva McGonagall, and also your professor of Transfiguration." Transfiguration. Ivan knew about Transfiguration, and he did not hide the fact that he knew it. "Can you show it to me?" Professor McGonagall did not refuse. She took out her wand and turned the cabinet beside her into a cat in front of Ivan, and then changed it back. Wow. Although Ivan had seen it many times in the movie, he had also seen Professor McGonagall's appearance in class through uncontrollable prophecies before. But seeing this magical scene with his own eyes still surprised Ivan. Such a big cabinet turned into a cat. The changes here are enough to subvert any scientist's three views. It's nothing. Professor McGonagall smiled and said, "You can learn these at Hogwarts." That's great. Ivan was indeed looking forward to it. You must be wondering why I knew your name in advance. By the way, I didn't eavesdrop on your conversation with Mrs. Mina. But since you are a professor at a magic school, you should be able to understand my situation, right? Ivan pointed to the mirror placed aside and said, "For example, when you look at reflective objects such as mirrors, water surfaces, and glass, you can see certain images." Images? Professor McGonagall frowned and asked, "Can you tell me in detail?" "Of course," Ivan said. "Just like in a few minutes, Mrs. Mina will come with snacks." Through prophecy, Ivan told Professor McGonagall the future he saw. He accurately described the types and quantities of snacks, as well as Mrs. Mina's reaction when she entered the door, and even how Professor McGonagall would respond, all described clearly. Professor McGonagall was obviously confused by Ivan's speech. "You mean you saw the future and made a prediction?" Professor McGonagall naturally knew about the prophecy because it was a kind of magic. But the problem is that Professor McGonagall has always been repulsive to such imprecise things as prophecy. Just like she didn't like Professor Trelawney of the prophecy class. She thought that the other party's so-called prophecy was nonsense. Knock, knock. However, at this moment, Mrs. Mina knocked on the door. Next, Mrs. Mina placed several plates of snacks in front of the two people, and what she said was exactly the same as what Ivan had described before. "Excuse me, is there any problem?" After Mrs. Mina finished speaking, she saw Professor McGonagall staring at her blankly, a little puzzled. It's okay. I just feel a little." Professor McGonagall, at a loss. After the voice fell, Professor McGonagall realized that her reaction was exactly the same as what Ivan had just told her. How is that possible? Professor McGonagall quickly looked at Ivan and saw the boy smiling as he picked up a cookie and put it in his mouth. "I'm glad you don't mind." Mrs. Mina smiled at Professor McGonagall and closed the door. "Well, excuse me." Chapter 4. The Wizarding World's Contempt Chain Incredible. Professor McGonagall's eyes were full of surprise. She already believed that Ivan had the gift of prophecy. She reacted almost subconsciously just now, and this was exactly what Ivan predicted. "How did you do it? Is there any problem with this?" Ivan asked. "I think my talent should be the magic you mentioned, Professor." "No, Mr. Ambrosius." Professor McGonagall saw that Ivan was normal and everyone in the magic world would have it, and said seriously, "Your talent is extremely rare even in the magic world. As far as I know, only one person has a similar ability." "Who is it?" "Sorry, I can't say the name of that person directly." Professor McGonagall apologized. That person once brought unimaginable changes to the magic world. "Of course, believe me, Mr. Ambrosius, this has nothing to do with your talent. You are a good kid." To this day, whenever Professor McGonagall thinks of Grindelwald, she still feels terrified. McGonagall here uses the timeline of Fantastic Beasts, so he is several decades older than in Harry Potter. Ivan knew that the person Professor McGonagall was talking about should be Gellert Grindelwald. However, Professor McGonagall obviously would not associate Ivan with Grindelwald because of similar predictive abilities. Your talent is called Prophecy Magus in the magic world. It is a natural and extremely rare magical talent. Professor McGonagall thought that this time to guide the new students was just a very ordinary little thing, but she never thought that she would pick up such a big treasure as Ivan here. A Prophecy Magus, a natural prophet. "Believe me, Mr. Ambrosius," McGonagall said seriously, "you will definitely achieve something in the future." "Thank you. And you can call me Ivan." "Okay, little Ivan." Professor McGonagall had a very good impression of Ivan. This was not only because of his special talent, but also because the boy in front of him was indeed as well-behaved and sensible as Mrs. Mina said. Thinking of Ivan's life experience, Professor McGonagall couldn't help but feel sorry for the child in front of him. In Hogwarts, Muggle-born wizards are not uncommon, but orphans are Muggle-born orphans. If they were placed in Slytherin, they would definitely be at the bottom of the food chain. Pureblood family origin, pureblood, half-blood, mudblood. Dependent mudblood, well, Ivan belongs to the last one. A mudblood among mudbloods, a little stronger than Muggles, but not much stronger. This child shouldn't be sorted into Slytherin. Professor McGonagall is very clear about the criteria of the sorting hat. Slytherin generally only accepts pureblood. Although there are occasionally ambitious half-bloods and Muggle-born little wizards, they are all low-probability events. Ivan is a Muggle, and this alone has eliminated his hope of being sorted into Slytherin. As for the other 3 colleges, Professor McGonagall thinks they are all okay. Of course, it would be best if they were assigned to Gryffindor. As the head of Gryffindor College, Professor McGonagall felt that she could give Ivan the best care. Wait a minute. Thinking of this, Professor McGonagall was suddenly stunned. Is this child really born from a Muggle? A natural prophecy magus. Such a talent is rare even in the magic world. But it was born among Muggles. Professor McGonagall was a little confused. She was not a racist, nor did she support the theory of bloodline, and she was a half-blood wizard herself. However, from a purely academic perspective, the probability that Ivan's parents are wizards is much higher than that of Muggles. Ambrosius? For this surname, Professor McGonagall did not think of any family in the magic world with the surname Ambrosius. Thinking of this, Professor McGonagall asked Ivan about his life experience. I don't know either. When Ivan traveled through time, he had no token to prove his identity except a piece of paper with his name on it. He also gave the ring on his hand to McGonagall. The latter checked it and did not see anything from the ring. Sorry, kid. Professor McGonagall returned the ring, his eyes full of apology. I haven't seen the emblem on this ring. It's okay. I'm not interested in my own life experience, Ivan said calmly. In comparison, I am more curious about the world of magic. By the way, Professor, where can I buy the things mentioned here? Ivan smiled slightly, then took out the list and the admission letter. I once saw a magical alley in the reflection of the lake. Is it there? Is this also your prophecy? Professor McGonagall was more and more surprised at Ivan's ability to predict. It's an incredible ability. Yes, we call the alley you mentioned Diagon Alley, which is the largest wizard market in the UK. And you don't have to worry about tuition fees. Professor McGonagall signaled Ivan to get ready. Studying at Hogwarts is free, and food and accommodation will be provided by the school. In addition, we will give young wizards like you a certain amount of galleons as scholarships. In order to prevent Ivan from not understanding the concept of galleons, Professor McGonagall explained the currency of the wizarding world to him. 1 galleon is equal to 17 sickles, which is equal to 493 gnats. Shall we set off to Diagon Alley now? I know you are very curious about the wizarding world, but I still need to guide another freshman. Professor McGonagall came out this time. Not only Ivan, a little wizard, needs to be guided. Compared with Ivan, she also has to talk to the parents of another freshman to make them believe in the existence of magic. After all, Professor McGonagall has never met a few young wizards like Ivan who can master wandless and silent spells before entering school. So, Professor McGonagall set a time with Ivan, and she would come again in the afternoon to take him and another freshman to Diagon Alley to buy the items on the list. With the departure of Professor McGonagall, Ivan was the only one left in the room. Ivan had already thought clearly about exposing his prophetic ability. It was not easy to travel through time once, and Ivan did not want to live in fear. Ivan has read a lot of Harry Potter fan fictions, in which the protagonists often regard Dumbledore as an imaginary enemy. And from the beginning, they think about how to prevent the old bee's legitimacy, fearing that their identity as a time traveler will be exposed. It's not that we shouldn't be wary of Dumbledore. It's true that old Dumbledore is highly respected and has a bottom line, and it's true that he won't pry into other people's privacy at will. But it's important to be on guard against others, and it's definitely right to be more careful. What really makes Ivan speechless is that these time travelers, while guarding against Dumbledore, don't take Snape to heart at all, and even take the initiative to approach him. You know, Snape's brand of clemency can even deceive Voldemort, even if his attainments in forging memories. Hiding emotions and exploring secrets are not as good as Dumbledore. for a first-year wizard. Both of them are irresistible. Ivan doesn't ask himself if he is a high IQ talent. He chose to tell Professor McGonagall about the gift of prophecy magus because it could cover up the fact that he knew the plot. In addition, legilimency is not a psychic power in Marvel that can see through the other person's entire memory at a glance. In essence, legilimency is mind reading, which can only read the superficial thoughts and ideas. To truly explore a person's memory, you need to take out the magic wand and use legilimency to extract the memory from a person's brain. However, such a thing, let alone Dumbledore, even Snape would not do it. Performing legilimency on a little wizard in Hogwarts obviously violates the principles of the professors and is a great offense to the privacy of others. Chapter 5 Hermione Granger. Brain occlumency is a magic that must be learned. Before I find a way to learn this magic, even if someone reads my memory, I can explain it with prophecy. After a hard time traveling through time, Ivan didn't want to intrigue with others. He was eager to explore the mysteries of magic, to appreciate the charm of this world, and then live a wonderful life. As for whether to get involved in Dumbledore's savior training plan, Ivan was not sure. He would not deny the original work and engage in conspiracy theories because of preconceived impressions. Similarly, Ivan would not shamelessly make friends with Harry and Ronald because of familiar names. Since I'm here, I'll make the best of it. Ivan ate snacks and drank tea. Other people's future has nothing to do with me. I just need to do my best. In this way, time quickly came to the afternoon. The morning mist had dissipated. Today was a good day, the sun was shining, and Ivan felt much better. It's time to come. Ivan glanced at the wall clock and waited at the location he predicted. Soon after, with a small sound, two figures suddenly appeared from the air. They were Professor McGonagall and another freshman she was going to guide. This was a little girl about 10 years old. She had brown eyes and thick, fluffy brown hair, and her big front teeth were quite conspicuous. Ugh. Cough, cough, cough. It's the first time to apparition. This is normal. Professor McGonagall gently stroked the girl's back, but the little girl straightened up and took a deep breath to suppress the discomfort caused by apparition. I'm fine, just a little uncomfortable. Well, okay, I'm fine. As if to show her strong adaptability, the little girl raised her head stubbornly, with a feeling of swell up her face and pretend to be fat. Puff! Hearing the sound, the girl looked in the direction of Ivan and found that it was a boy of the same age as her, who was holding back his laughter. Mr. Ambrosius, it is not gentlemanly to laugh at a lady. Professor McGonagall was not surprised that Ivan would wait here specially, and it was obvious that the other party had predicted this in advance. Sorry, Professor McGonagall. Ivan had already recognized the identity of the girl. The other party was Hermione Granger, one of the original Iron Triangles. The original novel of Harry Potter is also known as Hermione and Her Two Useless Men, and Ivan felt that it made sense. Because without Hermione, Harry and Ronald might not even be able to enter the door of the first part. Who are you? Hermione stared at Ivan dissatisfiedly, and was very dissatisfied with him for laughing at her. Ivan Ambrosius. Ivan smiled and said, like you, I'm also a freshman at Hogwarts this year. Also, I apologize for my rudeness just now. Hermione looked Ivan up and down. She was not the kind of person who liked to judge people by appearance. But I have to admit that Ivan's appearance and temperament are really good. Just thinking of Ivan's sneer, Hermione was embarrassed. Maybe I didn't perform well just now, but I believe it's only temporary. Ivan didn't quite understand the child's train of thought. Seemed to be a little competitive. Hermione Granger. But out of politeness, Miss Beaver still extended her hand. Nice meeting, Mr. Ambrosius. This also meant that Hermione accepted Ivan's apology. Just call me Ivan. Then you can call me Hermione too. Hermione asked curiously, are you a wizard? I mean, the kind that's different from me. Ms. Granger, Mr. Ambrosius is a muggle-born wizard like you. Yeah. Ivan nodded, then pointed to the orphanage not far away and said, just to add, I live there. Hermione saw the sign of the orphanage and instantly realized that Ivan was an orphan. She quickly apologized to Ivan. I'm sorry, Although Miss Beaver wanted to prove herself, she was more worried about suddenly entering the wizarding world from a muggle world. and was afraid of doing worse than others. This inferiority complex made her a little domineering, and she subconsciously put on an arrogant attitude. However, when she found out that Ivan was an orphan without even parents, Hermione immediately felt sympathy. It doesn't matter. Ivan said he didn't care about his background. He said to McGonagall, "Professor, shall we go to Diagon Alley now?" "Miss Granger?" Professor McGonagall asked about Hermione's physical condition, and the latter immediately straightened her chest. I'm fine. We can go now." "Okay then." Seeing Hermione so determined, Professor McGonagall could only say, "Hold my hand." Hermione quickly put her hand on Professor McGonagall's arm, and at the same time reminded Ivan that the feeling of apparition was not very good, so he should be prepared. Swish! Ivan naturally knew the process of apparition. The next moment, he only felt that his body was forced into a certain place, and then he was forced to pass through a very tight rubber tube. When Ivan regained consciousness again, he had already appeared in front of a very old and shabby bar. Cough, cough, cough. After 2 consecutive apparitions, Hermione's face turned pale, but she still looked at Ivan firmly. But after finding that Ivan didn't seem to react at all, Hermione widened her eyes in surprise, her eyes full of confusion. "Aren't you a muggle? Why don't you react at all?" Not only Hermione, but even Professor McGonagall looked at Ivan curiously. To be honest, they're talented little wizards, but for magic like apparition, most wizards will have some adverse reactions when they are not proficient. It's indeed the first time I have done this kind of shuttle. As for why I didn't feel anything, because I exercised regularly? Ivan thought it was because he was an obscurial. He found that the shuttle process just now was very similar to the feeling of turning into an obscurial. However, Ivan didn't intend to expose the obscurial here. If it was Dumbledore in person, the identity of the obscurial would definitely be a plus point, which could greatly win the sympathy of Dumbledore. As for not telling Professor McGonagall, it was because the power of the obscurial was too dark and powerful. Letting an obscurial enter Hogwarts is tantamount to playing with the lives of all the little wizards. Once Ivan goes berserk, not to mention the young wizards, even the adult wizards will be easily crushed. Professor McGonagall may allow werewolves to become students and professors at Hogwarts, but can she accept a time bomb like Ivan? Ivan has not seen this answer in the prophecy yet. However, there's one thing that Ivan can be sure of, that is, he cannot tell this secret to a young wizard like Hermione. After all, once the Obscurus is exposed, Ivan will inevitably be expelled from school. The parents of young wizards will not tolerate an Obscurus staying with their children, even if Dumbledore guarantees it, and the professors prove that Ivan has the ability to control the Obscurus. Adult wizards will not accept the existence of a dangerous monster like Ivan in Hogwarts. A strong body can indeed reduce the adverse reactions of apparition. Professor McGonagall guessed that Ivan was hiding something, but she would not explore Ivan's secret. On the other hand, Miss Beaver's eyes were almost overflowing with unyielding. What else could Ivan do? He really didn't expect Hermione's competitive spirit to be so strong. "Let's go." Professor McGonagall led the two into the leaky cauldron. Unlike the mystery that Ivan and Hermione imagined, the interior of the leaky cauldron was just like its name, dark and dirty. When the wizards in the bar saw Professor McGonagall, they all greeted her. The owner, Tom, even asked eagerly, "Professor McGonagall, would you like something to drink?" The owner of the leaky cauldron was hunched over, with a pointed head and no hair on top of his head. To Ivan, he felt like an old bat without hair, very weird. Hermione was frightened by Tom approaching and instinctively shrank behind Ivan. Only after realizing that her behavior was a bit embarrassing, Miss Beaver mustered up the courage and separated from Ivan a little. Chapter 6, Diagon Alley. Oh, 2 little guys I haven't seen before. Standing behind the bar, Tom leaned over and smiled at the two of them. "Are you freshmen at Hogwarts this year?" "Yes, Tom." Professor McGonagall nodded to old Tom and walked forward with Hermione and Ivan. "Also, it's not convenient to drink during work." "Ha! If Hagrid hears this, it will be very interesting." Ignoring old Tom's teasing of Hagrid, the 3 of them walked through the bar and came to the patio, surrounded by walls on all sides, where a trash can and some weeds were placed. Remember, Count 3 bricks upwards and 2 bricks horizontally. Professor McGonagall motioned Ivan and Hermione to watch her count the bricks, then took out her wand and tapped the wall 3 times at the places she had counted before. Galala, the next moment, under the eyes of Ivan and Hermione, the bricks on the wall began to move, revealing a small hole. The hole became bigger and bigger, and soon a wide archway and a street paved with cobblestones appeared in front of the two. Welcome to Diagon Alley. The pedestrians who kept coming and going on the street, dressed in simple and strange clothes, attracted the eyes of Ivan and Hermione, especially the latter, who was completely attracted by the scene in front of her and could not look away. Wizards and magic have a huge appeal to little girls like Hermione, who hasn't imagined themselves as a little princess. The three walked along the archway, and when Hermione looked back, she saw that the archway suddenly narrowed and soon turned into the original solid wall again. Diagon Alley is the most prosperous commercial street in the British wizarding world, and many first-line brand stores in the wizarding world have flagship stores here. Ivan glanced at it, and one by one, the stores he remembered in his previous life or had never seen came into his sight. Ollivander's Wand Shop, Hopping and Playing Magic Joke Shop, Florent Fosco Ice Cream, Jishu Stationery Shop, Thrift Store, Horror Journey Wizard Travel Agency, Quidditch Boutique, Flourish and Blots Bookstore, Madame Malkin's Rogue Shop, Partridge's Cauldron Shop, Magical Creatures Shop, Toffin's Finished Products Shop, Weezaker's Magical Supplies Shop, Ella's Owl Shop, etc. The real wizarding world is much wider than what we see in novels and movies. In Ivan's sigh, Professor McGonagall took Hermione and Ivan to Gringotts first, where they were going to exchange Muggle currency for gold galleons for Hermione. 4 young wizards from Muggle families, there's a certain limit of Muggle currency exchange for wizard currency every year. Hermione's father is a dentist, which is a high-income group in Western countries. If the exchange rate of 5:1 between pounds and gold galleons is followed, as Rowling said, Mr. Granger might be able to exchange tens of thousands of galleons for Hermione on the spot. What a magical place. Hermione grabbed Ivan's hand, and it seemed that she had forgotten to let go since she met Tom. Miss Beaver was already nervous when she first entered the magical world. At first, she might have wanted to compare herself with Ivan, who was also born in Muggles. But facing an unfamiliar environment, it is human nature to keep warm together. Ivan came from the same place as her, and Ivan behaved so steadily, which inevitably made the little girl subconsciously want to rely on him. Yes, Ivan pinched Hermione's little hand, indicating that she didn't need to be nervous. I think living in such a world must be very interesting. Aren't you afraid at all? Hermione admired Ivan's character. They were obviously the same age, but Ivan was so mature. Maybe it's because I've been living in an orphanage. Hermione whispered, I'm sorry, I'm not. It's okay. I don't think it's a painful memory. Ivan's attitude made Hermione feel ashamed. By the way, I just saw a bookstore. After exchanging wizard currency, we can buy together and then read it alternately. This should save a lot of money. Yeah, hearing about books, Hermione immediately became energetic and returned to the somewhat proud Miss Beaver's posture. Professor McGonagall looked back at the 2 little wizards and was happy that they could gain friendship before entering school. Soon, the 3 of them came to a snow-white building that towered above the surrounding shops. Beside the shiny bronze door, there stood a figure wearing a scarlet and gold uniform. The other person was a head shorter than Hermione and Ivan, with a dark face that exuded intelligence and a pointed beard. Ivan found that his hands and feet were particularly long. When they entered the door, the goblin bowed to them. What are they? Goblins, Professor McGonagall. They work for Gringotts and keep the wealth for wizards. Hermione didn't react to this, but Ivan couldn't help but frown. He didn't know the specific relationship between goblins and wizards, but he thought it was stupid to hand over the bank to goblins. Ivan remembered that when he read the setting of Harry Potter in his previous life, goblins should be the losers. However, the losers could actually control the economic lifeline of the wizarding world, which was incredible. What's wrong, Ivan? Nothing. Ivan didn't say it directly. He knew that such words were not suitable to be said here. So, the 3 of them passed through the second door again. The door was silver, and the following words were engraved on both doors. "Come in, stranger, but beware of the consequences of greed. If you only ask for something that never belonged to you, you will be punished most severely." So if you want to take a share of our underground vault that never belonged to you, you have been warned. Thief, beware the consequences of bringing evil instead of treasure. TSK. Ivan read these warnings, his eyes narrowed slightly. These goblins are an eyesore. The two goblins in front bowed to them and led them into a tall marble hall. There were about 100 goblins sitting on high stools behind a long row of counters, some weighing coins with copper scales, some examining gems with eyepieces, and hastily recording them in a large account book. There were countless doors in the hall, leading to different places, and many goblins pointed bows to lead people in and out of these doors. "How can I help you?" The goblins behind the counter stood on high stools, which allowed them to look down at the visitors. "Professor McGonagall?" Professor McGonagall is a master of transfiguration in the British wizarding world. Her magic level is only second to that of Dumbledore, a great wizard in the world, and is definitely at the top level. With decades of teaching, it is not an exaggeration to say that her students are all over the UK. Even the goblins in Gringotts dare not be too arrogant in front of Professor McGonagall. Chapter 7 Gringotts. I want to apply for currency exchange service for this year's freshman. "Oh, is it time again?" The goblin behind the counter propped himself up and looked down at Ivan and Hermione standing next to Professor McGonagall. He looked at the two and asked, "Excuse me, who needs to exchange wizard currency?" "It's Miss Granger." "Sorry, Professor." At this time, Ivan interrupted and said, "I wonder how much this money can be exchanged for." Professor McGonagall looked at Ivan in confusion, and the latter blinked at her. Professor McGonagall hesitated for a moment and said to the goblin, "Miss Granger and Mr. Ambrosius need exchange service. Although Hogwarts has scholarships for helpless little wizards like Ivan, those scholarships are only enough for Ivan to complete the purchase of basic materials and school supplies. Therefore, Ivan chose to give up the scholarship and apply for Muggle currency exchange service instead. "Ivan, do you have enough money?" Hermione brought about 2,000 pounds this time, which can be exchanged for about 400 gold galleons at the current exchange rate. Of course, this is theoretically. In fact, young wizards from Muggle families can exchange up to 100 galleons per year, and this exchange rate will change at any time. For example, if someone exchanges a large number of galleons with Muggle currency in a short period of time, then the exchange rate of 1:5 may become 150 or even 1:500. Goblins do not need Muggle currency. To them, Muggle currency is no different from waste paper. So the best way to exchange should be to buy gold in the Muggle world first, and then exchange gold for galleons. Although this exchange method will also lead to the depreciation of gold, resulting in fewer and fewer galleons that can be exchanged, the goblins' love for gold has been high since ancient times. With limited global gold reserves, goblins don't mind taking all the gold in the Muggle world at the lowest price. Anyway, they're the only buyers. If Ivan could really produce several tons of gold, the goblin would make him realize the dangers of society and directly devalue gold to cabbage price. How many galleons can these gold be exchanged for? Ivan took a box of gold out of his backpack and then put it on the counter with the help of Professor McGonagall. He knew that he would carefully control the output of gold so as not to let these ugly goblins take advantage of it. Gold. The goblin opened the box and saw a row of small yellow fish neatly placed inside. "Oh, it's really these golden little cuties. Mr. Ambrosius, right?" The goblin held up his glasses. "According to the current gold exchange rate, you can exchange them for 250 gold galleons at Gringotts." Hearing this price, Ivan's eyes turned cold. Obviously, there's definitely a lot of deductions here. Okay, Ivan did not bargain and directly accepted the deal in the surprised eyes of Hermione and Professor McGonagall. He silently kept this account in his heart. For now, let these goblins be proud for a while. On the other side, Hermione also exchanged 80 gold galleons, and after the three of them left Gringotts, Professor McGonagall asked Ivan about the box of gold. "Professor, all my gold was purchased with legal income. Ivan told Professor McGonagall that when he was a child, he had predicted the lottery results in the newspaper and successfully won the third prize to improve the life of the orphanage. In addition, Ivan would also use his savings to buy sports betting. He did not dare to use the prophecy to make money at will, and he would control the amount within a certain range every time. Of course, Ivan concealed some things. For example, he changed his appearance by using the disguise Magus and opened several bank accounts in the Muggle world to prepare for his future life after leaving the orphanage. Similarly, it was also with the help of Disguisemagus that Ivan could keep himself safe and hidden even though he had a lot of wealth. Great, amazing. Hermione widened her eyes, amazed at Ivan's divine ability. In the past, when it came to the ability to predict the future, I always thought about whether I can predict the lottery results. I didn't expect to meet a prophet today, and he did it. Even Professor McGonagall didn't know what to say. In the end, Professor McGonagall could only tell Ivan to be careful not to be discovered by Muggles and not to indulge in gambling, and then let the matter go. The three of them left Gringotts. Professor McGonagall asked them to take out the shopping list, and Miss Beaver recited the contents of the list directly. Uniform 3 sets of plain work robes, black. 1 plain peaked hat for daytime, wear black. 1 pair of protective gloves, made of dragon skin or similar material. 1 winter cloak, black, silver buckles, note. All student clothing must be attached with name tags. Textbooks, standard spells, elementary, history of magic, magic theory, beginner's guide to transfiguration, 1,000 magical herbs and fungi. Magical potions and liquids, fantastic beasts and where to find them, dark arts, a guide to self-defense, other 1 wand, 1 crucible, 10, standard size 2, 1 set of glass or crystal files, 1 telescope, 1 brass balance. Students may bring 1 owl, 1 cat, or 1 toad. Parents are kindly reminded that first-year students are not allowed to bring their own broomsticks. After the voice fell, Hermione looked at Ivan and Professor McGonagall with great energy. The latter smiled and praised. It seems that our Miss Granger is well prepared. Professor McGonagall likes little witches like Hermione who love to learn. As for the desire to show herself, Professor McGonagall, who was born of mixed blood, was similar to Hermione in the past, and also wanted to prove that she was no worse than those pure-blood wizards. Ivan, how about we go by the textbooks for this year first? Hermione has a strong desire for knowledge. The only shortcoming is that she believes too much in what is written in the books and regards it as the truth. Okay, Ivan and Hermione went to Flourish and Blots, and they were completely attracted by the piles of books in the store. At the same time, Professor McGonagall asked the two to stay in Flourish and Blots, and she went to help them buy crucibles, gloves, and other supplies. McGonagall, who has been a professor at Hogwarts for many years, knows the ins and outs of this. By checking it personally, she can not only keep the price to the lowest, but also ensure the quality of the things. Professor McGonagall is such a good teacher. Hermione sighed. It would be great if all professors at Hogwarts were like her. Professor McGonagall, who is serious and old-fashioned in the eyes of others, is actually a proud cat girl who is cold on the outside, but warm on the inside in the eyes of Ivan and Hermione. Well, this cat girl is a little old. Chapter 8. Purchasing a wand. Let's go pick out the first-year textbooks. Hermione couldn't wait to pull Ivan towards the rows of bookshelves. They didn't choose to buy secondhand books. Some people may think that the notes of senior students on secondhand books can better assist learning. However, for the two, secondhand books are really unnecessary except for saving money. Especially Hermione. She needs new books because it gives her more space to take notes and highlight key points. Please pack Miranda Goshawk's standard spells, elementary, standard spells, level 2, level 3, level 4 for me. Ivan bought all the textbooks that the little wizard would need in the next few years at once, which made Hermione envious. Unfortunately, Hermione's gold galleons were not enough for her to be so generous. Fortunately, Ivan promised the little witch that he would lend her those senior textbooks, which greatly improved Hermione's favor and completely let go of the last bit of grudge in her heart. Both of them were born as Muggles, but Ivan was more talented than her. Not only that, Ivan's modesty, gentleness, strength, and wisdom won the little witch's admiration. Ivan had read the original book and knew the little witch's personality. Hermione at this time was a typical person with high IQ and low EQ. She was domineering and rigid and didn't know how to adapt. Fortunately, Ivan had his own way. As long as he regarded the little witch as a little willful sister, Ivan felt much more acceptable. For a little girl, it's no big deal to be a little coquettish. Ivan, you know a lot. If it were someone else, Hermione might not be so obedient. But facing Ivan, a boy of the same age who was better and more mature than herself, Hermione instinctively chose to believe him and correct her own problems. Because Professor McGonagall hadn't come back yet, Hermione stayed in Flourish and Blots with Ivan to read books. However, for the same content, Ivan's learning speed is faster than Hermione's. Whenever the latter encounters difficulties in understanding, she always gets a simple and clear answer when asking Ivan. Of course, the little witch is not always guided by Ivan unilaterally. The two have different styles and focuses. Hermione prefers to recite the whole article, not missing any clues. In contrast, Ivan chooses to grasp the key points and only remember the core, which also allows Hermione to always find the details that Ivan missed at the first time. In this way, the relationship between the two became closer and closer, and they became good friends who communicated and studied together. Ahem. I don't know how long it took Professor McGonagall, who came back from shopping, saw this warm scene. She coughed twice and smiled. It seems that you get along well. Yeah, Ivan praised. Hermione is the smartest girl I have ever seen. Being evaluated as the smartest by Ivan, even Hermione blushed a little. The little witch suppressed her shame and said proudly, "Obviously, Ivan, you are the smartest one." Growing up, Hermione had never admitted that there was anyone smarter than herself, and Ivan was the only one. Okay, Professor McGonagall was very happy that they could become good friends. "My clever little sir and lady, pack up your things, and now it's time to choose our first wand." Wands are props used by wizards to assist in casting spells. One of the biggest differences between wizards in the Harry Potter world and those in other worlds is that they need wands to cast magic. Of course, the need here is not inevitable. The role of the wand is to guide the wizard's magical power so that it can better follow the heart and get the desired results. Professor. Ivan followed Professor McGonagall and asked, "Can't you cast spells without a wand?" Many young wizards will have the same question as you. Professor McGonagall glanced at Ivan and said, "The technique of casting spells without a wand is called wandless casting, which requires a very high level of magical attainments." In Professor McGonagall's explanation, the young wizard is like a newborn child. The magic power in his body is the ability to speak, and casting spells with a wand is like mastering a language. In simple terms, if wand casting is compared to communicating in the mother tongue, then wandless casting is learning a foreign language. The same is true in reverse. When African wizards who are used to casting spells with gestures suddenly pick up the wand will not only fail to make their casting smoother, but will also risk losing control. Casting spells without spells and wands is the essence of magic in this world, which is the highest realm of making your wishes come true. With Ivan's current magic level, he is not qualified to think about the real wish coming true. He's a bit too ambitious. Ivan, you have to know that not every little wizard can master such power. Professor McGonagall warned. Compared to the convenience of magic, we need its safety and stability more. There's a risk of magic getting out of control. Even adult wizards have the tragedy of being killed by a spell. I remember, Professor, although Ivan's magic power is huge, except for the obscurus and those blood magics, he can only do some simple tricks at most, such as taking object from the air and making certain things disappear. Professor McGonagall looked at Ivan with relief. She liked this smart and sensible child very much. Only then did she change her seriousness when facing other little wizards and carefully instruct them. Soon, the three of them came to a small and shabby store. The golden sign on the door had peeled off, and it read, "Ollivander, making excellent wands since 382 BC. In the dusty window, a wand was placed alone on the faded purple cushion. The shop was small, with nothing but a bench. "Oh, good morning, Minerva." In the dim little room, A soft and old voice came from the wand box that was almost piled up to the ceiling. The old man came to the counter and smiled. 9.5 inches fir wood, dragon heart tendon, hard texture. He was talking about the wand that Professor McGonagall bought here that year. Your memory has always been so good, Garrick. Memory? No, no, no. I always think that it is the wand that chooses the wizard. Mr. Ollivander sighed. I still remember that day. I just took over my father's job, and then I met a picky witch. Isn't this a good memory? Hermione complained in Ivan's ear, and Ivan coughed dryly, indicating that Ollivander was looking at them. The frightened little witch stuck out her tongue and lowered her head. Chapter 9, The Ambrosius Family. It looks like two more energetic guests. Ollivander took out a measuring tape. Who will go first? You go first, Hermione. Ivan asked Ollivander to measure Hermione first. The old man first asked Hermione about her dominant hand, and then began to measure the size of the little witch. From shoulder to fingertips, from wrist to elbow, shoulder to floor, knee to armpit, and finally measure the circumference of the head. Each Ollivander wand has a super powerful magical substance, which is its essence. Mr. Ollivander said, while measuring, we use unicorn hair, phoenix tail, feathers, and dragon nerves. Each Ollivander wand is unique because no two unicorns, dragons, or phoenixes are exactly the same. Of course, if you use a wand that should belong to another wizard, it will never have such a good effect. Sorry, sir. Hermione asked, I don't quite understand why you need to measure your body data when buying a wand. After all, our bodies will continue to grow. Will the wand be replaced like clothes at that time? The little witch had no ill intentions. She was just simply curious. In fact, if Hermione was alone, in order to leave a good impression in front of Professor McGonagall, she would never ask such a question. However, because of Ivan's appearance, Hermione really couldn't suppress her curiosity. Good question. Mr. Ollivander was not angry, but said with excitement, remember what I said just now. It is the wand that chooses the wizard. The wand is not only a tool in the hands of wizards, but also a companion who can accompany them throughout their lives. The wizard's body will change, and our wand will also grow. Mr. Ollivander? Hermione looked confused. You're talking about it as if the wand has its own life? Of course the wand has a life. The old man laughed, but did not explain any more. Instead, he picked out a wand from the countless boxes and handed it to Hermione. Try this one. 10.25 inches willow, dragon heartstring. Hermione took the wand, but as soon as she touched it, the old man shouted loudly, No, not this one. In Hermione's panic, Ollivander snatched it back, and he looked like he had encountered something dirty. The little witch looked confused. She thought Ollivander might have something wrong. Did I touch the wand just now? What happened? Hermione looked at Ivan, her eyes full of confusion. The latter smiled and said, I think the wand has the ability to identify the magic of wizards. Didn't Mr. Ollivander just say that the wand has life? Yes. Ollivander looked back at Ivan and smiled. Every wand is unique, just like there are no leaves in the world that are exactly the same. Many wizards regard wands as tools, but they don't know that they are the best partners of wizards. Wands will change as wizards grow up. They are part of the wizard's life. The wand is obtained when the little wizard enters the school, bound to their magical characteristics, and grows with them. And when the wizard's life comes to an end, the wand will die soon. Otherwise, with Ollivander's 2,300-year history of wand making, there must be thousands or even tens of thousands of wands left in the world, if not tens of thousands. But the problem is that there are not so many wands in the wizarding world, because wands are closely related to the lives of wizards. Well, it should be this. Ollivander searched for a long time and finally found a new wand in the back. Try this one. 10.75 inches vine wood dragon heartstring. Hermione took the wand, and the moment the little witch grabbed it, an inexplicable sense of intimacy arose. Wonderful. Ollivander laughed at this. Grapevine wands are very rare. They usually choose those who have lofty pursuits, foresight, and will do things that shock their friends who think they know them. I feel like it is an extension of my arm. Hermione waved the wand gently, leaving a little fluorescent light in the air. This kind of lightness like fingerarm is like untying the heavy shackles on the body. Ollivander looked at Hermione's love for it and was happy that his work could meet the right owner. Sincerely, 7 gold galleons. The first wand of the little wizard will receive a certain subsidy, so only 7 galleons are needed. Hermione paid and bought a set of wand care tools. Next, Mr. Ambrosius. Ollivander read Ivan's last name several times and seemed to think of something. Your last name reminds me of a legendary family. Legendary family? Hearing this, not only Ivan and Hermione, but even Professor McGonagall, who had been standing silently beside them after entering, couldn't help but become interested. Garrick, what family are you talking about? The surname Ollivander is very old, and it is listed as one of the 28 sacred families in the British magic world. Professor McGonagall was very curious about Ivan's life experience and didn't expect to get a clue from Ollivander. Minerva, you should know, right? After all, we always say that. Ollivander laughed and then jokingly said, Merlin's beard. Merlin's? Oh, Merlin's beard. Suddenly, Professor McGonagall realized and looked at Ivan with shock. Merlin Ambrosius. In this world, Merlin is a wizard with powerful magic. He is a natural prophet and has the ability to transform into anyone's appearance. Ollivander noticed McGonagall's gaze and then looked at Ivan, who was also a little surprised. The old man's face changed slightly, and he asked in disbelief, Excuse me, Minerva. I want to ask this child. It should be just a coincidence, right? Professor McGonagall wanted to say that this was a coincidence, but thinking of Ivan's bug-like prophetic ability, I'm sorry, Garrick, I think this child is likely to be the descendant of the only one left now. Merlin's beard. Ollivander's eyes widened, and he stared at Ivan for a long time. The great eternal family. I didn't expect that there would be someone who could bloom such a noble bloodline in this era. Ambrosius means eternal and immortal. So in the wizarding world, people who inherited Merlin's bloodline are usually called immortal descendants. As for the surname Ambrosius, it has left a legend of the eternal family in the wizarding world. But I heard that the bloodline of the eternal family was cut off 1,000 years ago. No, it's not cut off. Ollivander said it was scattered. There is no Ambrosius family in the wizarding world today, because this family disappeared 1,000 years ago. As for the reason, it was not a disaster, but simply because the male heirs were extinct. As the female descendants got married, Merlin's bloodline was scattered among the families, and only those who awakened both the prophecy Magus and the metamorphosis Magus at the same time could be called the immortal descendants. Chapter 10. Picky Guests Ahem. Hermione was confused by the two people's catch shock.jpg from the beginning. Sorry, do you mean Ivan is the descendant of Merlin? Who is Merlin? I guess knowing what people don't know. He is a legendary figure who must appear when mentioning King Arthur. Thinking carefully, Ivan does have a strong ability to predict and is a prophet, but Ivan doesn't seem to have the ability to become someone else. Hermione is not jealous of Ivan. She hopes that her little friend is good enough. It's just that the title of eternal descendant sounds very troublesome. The little witch doesn't want Ivan to be in danger. Well, according to what I saw in the bookstore just now, I should still be a natural transfiguration magus. After Ivan finished speaking, he turned into Hermione, Professor McGonagall, and Ollivander in front of the three people. The whole process was done in one go, so fast, without any pause, and the three people who watched were stunned, with unbelievable eyes. This is the first time I've seen such human transformation. Professor McGonagall had seen Transfiguration Magus before, but those Transfiguration Magus could only transform their appearance to a certain extent. But Ivan could change his body shape, voice, and body details. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, Professor McGonagall would definitely think that he had stuffed a bottle of polyjuice potion in his throat in advance. Amazing magic. Ollivander felt honored to be able to witness the blossoming of a descendant of Merlin. He trembled and stretched out his hand and shook hands with Ivan. Welcome back, great Ambrosius. Ivan didn't have much experience. His Merlin bloodline was given by the system when he traveled through time. Before today, he didn't even know what the surname Ambrosius meant in the magic world. Oh, sorry, I'm too excited. Ollivander's fingers trembled as he began to look for a wand suitable for Ivan. Now, let me see which wand is honored to serve you. Facing the descendant of Merlin, who is considered a legendary figure in the magic world, Ollivander called choosing a wand serving, which shows his inner restlessness at this time. Partner, please, is it aggrieved to be Merlin's knight? It is such an honor for a wand to fight side by side with the greatest wizard. If you don't want to serve, there are wands. If you want, Ollivander's wand shop has no shortage of wands. Let's try this first. Ollivander handed a wand to Ivan. Elm, Thunderbird tail feathers 9.5 inches. Elm wands are usually chosen by owners with grace, outstanding magical talent, and innate noble temperament. Ollivander introduced. Its wand core comes from an extremely powerful adult Thunderbird. Although wands with Thunderbird tail feathers as wand cores are difficult to master, they usually have very powerful power and are especially precious to Transfiguration Masters. The same material, just like lightning wood is divided into hundreds and thousands of years, there's also a gap between elm and elm. The wand that Ollivander took out was his masterpiece. The elm and Thunderbird tail feathers used were the top of the two materials. Its price has long exceeded the level of 7 galleons. It is not an exaggeration to say that it is priceless. Buzz, when Ivan held the wand in his hand, a strange magical wave came from the wand. Ivan tried waving it and found that the flow of magic power in his body became particularly easy. I feel that my magic power has suddenly become 10 times lighter. However, just when Ivan thought he had found a suitable wand, Ollivander shook his head. No, not this one. The old man looked very disappointed, as if his craftsmanship had not been recognized by the customer. What? Seeing Ollivander turn around and continue to look, Ivan asked in confusion. Ollivander told Ivan that this wand did not choose him, but chose to surrender under the pressure of Ivan's powerful power. Although Ollivander's original intention was to choose a squire knight for Ivan, he couldn't just choose one casually. If Ivan is the king of a country, then the wand should be a loyal minister under the king. The elm wand is too flattering. Its so-called service is just to please its master, a complete treacherous appearance. Of course, this does not mean that the elm wand is not good. Ollivander believes in the excellence of his own wand. But such words are just deceiving himself. Thinking of his own elm wand's flirtatious behavior after approaching Ivan, Ollivander felt that he had lost face because of it. Choosing a wand is not about giving the best to someone. There was no other way. The old man could only comfort himself by saying the Ollivander family's principle in making wands. The most suitable is the best. The implication was, my level was not good enough, so I had to ask the ancestors for help. This wand is my father's last work and his most proud work. Ollivander picked out a wand with a black body and a silver-white handle. The wand body is made of ebony, which has an impressive reputation and appearance. They are very suitable for all types of offensive magic and transfiguration. Ebony usually chooses those who have the courage to be themselves. They don't follow the crowd, are independent, and like to immerse themselves in the state of being outsiders. In addition, the perfect partner of the ebony wand is those who can ignore external pressure and stick to their beliefs. Not only that, the handle of this wand is made of fairy mithril, a very precious alchemical material in the wizarding world. Ollivander's willingness to take it out is the greatest recognition of Ivan. The wand core comes from the tail feathers of a phoenix. Wands made of this kind of material are the most picky and the most difficult to tame. Come on, try it. Ivan handed the wooden wand to Ivan, who felt the excitement from the wand as soon as he got it. If the previous wand made Ivan's spell casting smoother and easier by 10 times, then this one can at least make it 20 times. The 20 times here does not mean that the power is increased by 20 times. Ivan himself has the talent of wandless casting, but the feeling of blockage will have a great impact on his control and casting speed. But after owning this wand, Ivan can easily cast magic that he originally had difficulty in casting. For example, assuming that the difficulty of casting the luminescent spell is 1, the difficulty of the armor bodyguard is 5, and the difficulty of perfectly releasing the fiery spell, controllable, is 20. Ivan's wandless casting is only about 2. This means that he cannot break the magic blockage and cast the armor bodyguard without a wand. The wizards in the Harry Potter world do not have the concept of magic value. In Ivan's view, the magic in this world is not so much energy-driven, but more like using the so-called magic power to adjust the rules to achieve what he wants. Theoretically, as long as the wizard's mind is focused enough, they can even cast magic continuously for a whole day. Of course, mental fatigue is inevitable. After all, even if humans do nothing, they will be extremely sleepy at night, let alone casting spells like doing homework. Chapter 11. Natural-born mage, how do you feel, Ivan? Hermione saw Ivan's happy face and knew that he had found a suitable wand, so she was very happy for him. Ambrosius family, eternal bloodline, descendant of Merlin. These titles were too far away for Hermione. She only knew that Ivan was the first little wizard she knew and her friend. Very good. Ivan told Hermione about his feelings. He did not look down on the little witch because of his identity as a descendant of Merlin. He smiled and looked at Ollivander. Sir, thank you for choosing this wand for me. I think my father will be honored to receive your praise. But I'm sorry to tell you that this wand is not the most suitable for you either. Ollivander stretched out his hand and motioned Ivan to hand him the wand. Like the elm wand just now, it is too humble in front of you. Flattering ministers are not good, and servile servants are even more unworthy. What a terrible talent. Putting down the wand, Ollivander looked at Ivan with great emotion, his eyes full of shock. Sorry, Minerva. I lost my temper. Ollivander's magic attainments are not profound. Even in the British wizard world, he is not considered a master. In today's wizard world, if wizards are divided into levels, the top ones are great wizards like Dumbledore and Voldemort. Compared with other wizards, it is not an exaggeration to say that the two are another kind of creature. Facing these two, the number of people is meaningless. Even if they face dozens or even hundreds of powerful wizards at the same time, the two can easily defeat them. Below them are magic masters like McGonagall, Flitwick, and Snape. Most of them have extremely high magic attainments in a certain field and can fight one against many in battle. They're the best in the wizard world. Ollivander can barely be regarded as a master of alchemy, but in terms of magic attainments, he has not reached the level of Professor McGonagall and can only be regarded as an elite wizard. Young wizards, senior wizards, adult wizards, elite wizards. There is no specific division between the four. The only difference is how much magic they master and whether they have a special skill. As for Ivan, Ollivander can only describe him in one sentence. That is, a natural wizard. You know, Voldemort was able to reach the level of Dumbledore, but he had to undergo more than one dark magic transformation, and even lost his handsome face for this. What about Ivan? He had just entered Hogwarts, and he already had the magic talent that Voldemort wanted at all costs. Next, Ollivander selected more than 20 wands that he thought were extremely powerful. Unfortunately, without exception, these wands were not very suitable for Ivan. It's really distressing. Ollivander rubbed his somewhat sour eyebrows. How long has it been since I met such a picky guest? At the same time, Ollivander said a little, "Oh yeah," in his heart. It turns out that he is not the only one who is not good at it. His father is just as bad as him. Many things need to be compared. Ollivander felt much better all of a sudden. His thoughts became clearer and his mood became much better. And Ollivander was ready for a long battle. He was so happy to have such a picky guest. Mr. Ollivander? Ivan saw Ollivander's eyes light up and hurriedly said, "If you really can't find it, this oak wand is good." Among so many wands, a wand with oak as the wand body and dragon heartstring as the wand core has the highest degree of fit. Described in data, it is 25 times smoother. With Ivan's powerful magic, he is confident that he can successfully perform almost all known magic. After dozens of failures in succession, Ollivander's excitement came up completely. So, Ollivander began to frantically search through boxes and cabinets, and then constantly replaced wands for Ivan to try. From his father to grandfather to great-grandfather. In half an hour, Ivan had the illusion that he had quickly passed through Ollivander's ancestors. No, there must be more. There must be more. Wait, little Ivan, wait a little longer. Ollivander came and went countless times, and now he was sweating profusely. Ivan looked at the pile of wand boxes on the side. He only had one thought now. That is, he hoped that Ollivander would not faint from exhaustion. Ivan was really afraid that he would have to kneel down and beg him not to die. What's the big deal? Ivan smiled bitterly to himself, and then looked at Hermione beside him, the little witch had begun to be immune to his unusualness. I remember it was placed near here. Ollivander seemed to be in a trance. He liked this kind of picky guest the most, because the more picky the little wizard was, the more it could prove his excellence. And Ivan, even in the records of the Ollivander family, was uniquely picky and had broken their ancestral record of choosing wands. Found it. Suddenly, Ollivander found a box from some corner. He excitedly returned to the counter and carefully pushed the wand in the box to Ivan. Come on, try this. Ivan opened the box and looked at the wands placed inside. The wand was like a piece of charcoal left after burning, with pits and bumps on it. If Ollivander hadn't taken it out himself, Ivan wouldn't even be able to tell it was a wand. This wand. Hermione felt that Ollivander was teasing her. This was not a wand at all. It was just a piece of burnt wood. Ivan didn't say anything, but silently took the wand out of the box. For some reason, the moment he saw the wand, Ivan felt the cry of an unknown bird, which was very pleasant and melodious, like a song. Crack, crack. The next moment, golden lines like lava appeared on the wand, and the surface of the wand began to break, and black wood chips kept falling. Gee! Ivan held the wand upright in front of him, watching the flames flying out from the tip. They turned into phoenixes with gorgeous tails, singing around Ivan. Perfect, too perfect. Ollivander was so excited when he saw this scene. The old man had disheveled hair and looked like an old beggar who had just crawled out of a garbage dump. But on that dirty face, a pair of extremely bright eyes silently told of his joy. This is the victory of the Ollivander family. It was proof that he, Garrick Ollivander, had defeated the picky Ambrosius after 1,000 years. Chapter 12 Phoenix. Is this the wand? Choosing the wizard? Ivan couldn't let go of the wand in his hand. This wonderful feeling was indescribable. As Ollivander said, the wand is the best partner of the wizard. It will accompany them throughout their lives and grow with them. In addition, after the soul is clicked to 4 o'clock, Ivan can open a very special vision. In this vision, Ivan clearly saw the small figure resting on the wand in his hand. It was a very beautiful phoenix, singing a cheerful song. Chee-chee. The phoenix vaguely sensed Ivan's gaze. He tilted his head and jumped to express the joy of awakening his little master. Cute little guy. Because there were outsiders here, Ivan did not interact with the little phoenix, but just blinked at him. Every wand is unique, and this one is the most special one, even among all the wands made by the Ollivander family. Then, Ollivander told Ivan the origin of this wand. A long time ago, my ancestors went to Bhutan, where the Oriental magic originated. That day, the phoenix landed on the phoenix tree on the top of the mountain in Bhutan. He turned into flames and died with the ancient tree. Sorry, I said Feng Huang. Can you understand? Yes. Ivan nodded and said, I know some Chinese. Your erudition is amazing. Ollivander's pronunciation was not standard, but he still tried his best to introduce it to Ivan. This magical creature from the East. The phoenix is a sacred bird from the East. According to the books published by the Chinese Ministry of Magic in Gillen, this magical creature has been extinct many years ago. If nothing unexpected happens, it is likely to be the only phoenix left in the world. Ollivander continued, unlike the phoenix, here, the phoenix in the Chinese magic world does not have the ability to be reborn, but in contrast, they have almost eternal life. Many wizards from the East believe that the phoenix has immortal qualities. Ollivander is not very familiar with the phoenix, so he is not clear about the specific information of this sacred bird. My ancestor found the last remnant from the embers of the fire and used superb alchemy to make it into a magic wand. It is neither a wand body nor a wand core, but a fusion of the two. But it is not complete because there is still one last step. Ollivander always thought it was just a legend in the family, but he didn't expect that someone could really wake it up. The last step? Rebirth, Ollivander said. The powerful and pure magic will give the soul sleeping in this wand a new life. In the eyes of the old man, this wand has gone beyond the scope of a wand. It is a work of art and a miracle. I feel very honored because I have witnessed the miracle that my ancestors have been looking forward to. Ollivander firmly stated that he would not charge any fees for this wand. He slowly pushed the wand in Ivan's hand to the boy. I believe that this wand will achieve unprecedented achievements in your hands. Ivan didn't know what to say, but Ollivander was right about one thing. This wand is indeed a miracle. Chirp! The phoenix on the wand is in tune with Ivan. It flutters its wings and lands on its owner's shoulder, as if expressing its closeness to him in this way. This phoenix is very different from the Dumbledore family's fox that Ivan saw in the movie. First of all, fox's scientific name should be phoenix, which means the immortal bird. The wand in Ivan's hand comes from the phoenix. In the Harry Potter world, the phoenix and the immortal bird are both divine birds born with flames, but they are not the same creatures. The immortal bird has the ability to be reborn from the ashes, and its tears can heal pain and disease, while the phoenix is a rarer magical creature than the phoenix. Ivan doesn't know whether the phoenix really existed in his previous life, but in the wizarding world, the so-called phoenix, redbird, and immortal bird of muggles are actually the same magical animal, the phoenix. The phoenix is the king of birds and can control flames. Although it does not have the ability to be reborn from the ashes, it can devour flames and magic power, thereby gaining eternal life. In addition, the phoenix will bless humans and bring them good luck. Its beautiful singing voice has the power to revive all things and save souls. Chi-chi. The little phoenix spread its wings again and flew around Ivan. The flame-like color and five-tail feathers contained different colors and magic, which made it look particularly sacred and majestic. It is indeed a divine bird called auspicious. It is so beautiful. Ivan kept praising it in his heart, but it was a pity that the people around him could not see this scene. In their eyes, the magic wand in Ivan's hand was magical, but it was still just a magic wand. However, when Ivan looked at the mirror placed in the room, he saw a young man riding a huge phoenix and soaring in the sky. It was his future self. It seems that the phoenix is not dead. Ivan had a hunch that as long as he continued to provide magic power to the magic wand, the sleeping phoenix in it would be able to return from death and be reborn. Go back first, little guy. The little phoenix could hear Ivan's inner voice. He circled the wand for a few times, then rushed into the sycamore wand and disappeared. By the way, there are these. Ollivander took out another set of the latest wand care tools and gave them to Ivan for free. This made the little witch envious. Even Professor McGonagall complained in a low voice that she was ripped off by Ollivander's father when she bought the care tools. Come to think of it, where is the profit from a wand that costs 7 galleons? If you really want to make money, you have to sell peripherals. Thank you, Mr. Ollivander. Ivan did not refuse the old man's kindness. I like this wand very much. After leaving Ollivander's wand shop, Ivan carefully put the wand into his sleeve. There was a bag he specially sewed there, which could ensure that the wand could be held in his hand as quickly as possible. Next, the three went to Madame Malkin's robe store to buy wizard robes. During this period, Ivan asked Madame Malkin to help him modify the wizard robe, shorten the dragging skirt, and make a place in the sleeve to store the magic wand. After seeing this, the little witch wanted to imitate it. Unfortunately, she was afraid that being unique would attract too much attention, so she only modified the sleeves. The purchase of the magic wand is the biggest expense. In addition to books, wizard robes, and instruments on the list, first-year freshmen can also bring a pet. Chapter 13, Pet Cat. Owls, cats, and toads. These are 3 pets that little wizards can choose. Because he had enough money, Ivan chose to buy a cat and an owl as pets. Owls are good companions for wizards, and they have strange magic. As long as you think of the name and appearance of the recipient, the owl can accurately deliver the letter to the other party. Of course, the premise is that there is no shielding spell around the recipient. So beautiful. Outside the pet shop, Hermione looked at the pure white snow owl in the cage through the glass, and the idea of buying it kept coming up. However, she just spent a lot of galleons on books, which made the financial situation of the little witch in her first school year not optimistic. I still have a lot of galleons on hand. You can exchange some with pounds from me. Ivan found Hermione's desire for pets and made this more reasonable suggestion. Although the two have known each other for a short time, they have already regarded each other as their first friend in the magic world. Hermione is not unacceptable to helping each other. Forget it. Hermione hesitated for a long time and finally shook her head. In the first year, I plan to focus more on studying. Pets will distract me. She planned to adapt to life in Hogwarts first, and then consider the issue of pets. Okay, Ivan walked into the magical animal store. The interior was cast with a traceless extension spell, and the interior space was much larger than it looked from the outside. But even so, the store was still very crowded. The walls were densely hung with cages, poisonous orange snails, big turtles with gems on their shells, sleek and smart black mice, owls, ravens, cats of various colors, cattails, shape-shifting rabbits, etc. Ahem. Ivan gently fanned his nose. The smell here is really a bit, because a large number of animals are crowded here. The air is filled with all kinds of smells, which really puts a lot of pressure on people's noses. Hermione frowned, looked at Ivan in agreement, and whispered, "The environment here is really bad." Fortunately, Ivan has a clear goal. Hogwarts first-year students cannot choose pets at will. After excluding the owl they already have and the toad that Ivan thinks is very anti-human, the two little witches walked straight to the cages where many cats were locked up. Ivan turned on his psychic vision, which allowed him to better perceive the magical fluctuations emanating from the cats. "Ivan, what do you think of it?" Hermione pulled Ivan's sleeve and pointed to a cage above. Ivan looked up and saw a Persian long-haired cat with fluffy and soft ginger hair, bow legs, and obviously a little pigeon-toed feet. In addition, it has a weird persimmon face, as if it had hit a brick wall head first. Seeing Hermione noticed it, the strange cat immediately looked at the little witch with its yellow eyes, shaking its big furry tail like a bottle brush, as if it was eager to get her favor. "Isn't it beautiful?" Ivan's mouth twitched slightly. He really couldn't understand the little witch's aesthetic taste, because in his opinion, this strange Persian cat was so ugly that it was not an exaggeration to say that it lowered the overall appearance of cats. However, Ivan did not refuse directly, but called the female clerk to ask about the specific situation of the cat. The clerk told them that the cat was called Crookshanks and had been in the store for almost a year. It has some cat nasal blood, but because it looks too weird, customers are reluctant to buy it. According to the female clerk's estimate, Crookshanks may be difficult to sell in another year or two. Oh, that's too pitiful. Hermione really likes this big cat named Crookshanks. When he heard Crookshanks' name, Ivan completely confirmed the other party's identity. It was the birthday gift Hermione bought in the 3rd grade. Ivan suggested that Hermione buy it. He still made the same suggestion as before, exchanging pounds for some galleons from him. If Hermione felt it was unfair, she could raise the exchange rate. Anyway, for Ivan, pounds could also buy things in the Muggle world. Okay, finally, under Ivan's persuasion, Hermione bought Crookshanks. There was no way. Hermione felt sorry for Crookshanks' experience. He was so beautiful. Why didn't everyone like him? To this, Ivan could only say, "As long as you like it." Next, it was Ivan's turn. He picked out a gray and white kitten from the pet cats. The other party looked less than 2 months old. From the perspective of bloodline, it looked a bit like Ivan's ragdoll cat in his previous life. It had sapphire eyes and exuded a magical halo that ordinary people could not see. Ivan didn't know what these lights meant, but among the many pet cats, its magic power was obviously stronger than other pet cats. "Excuse me, how much is this ragdoll?" "Ragdoll." The female clerk didn't know what ragdoll cats were. Ivan explained, "It's a domestic cat bred by Americans around 1970. According to my understanding, this cat has been in country for less than 10 years. Sorry, I don't quite understand what you mean, sir. The wizarding world is closed to information, especially when it comes to changes in the Muggle world. Almost no wizards will know too much." The female clerk told Ivan that the ragdoll cat he was talking about was also the offspring of a catkin in the store. just like Crookshanks. The catkin is a magical creature, and if you want to keep it, you need to get approval from the Ministry of Magic. But this ragdoll, a ragdoll cat, is different from Crookshanks, and it doesn't inherit much catkin blood. The female clerk said, "If you like it, sir, I can sell it to you at a low price." Obviously, in the female clerk's concept, although this cat is beautiful because the catkin blood is thin, it is actually not as good as Crookshanks in terms of price. Well, that's it. In the end, Ivan spent nearly 30 galleons in the magical animal store, 25 of which were used to buy Crookshanks, and the poor little guy was only worth 5 galleons. Ivan checked Yumi's gender and found that she was a female cat. Yumi was the name Ivan gave to the ragdoll cat. It came from a game Ivan played in his previous life, Magic Cat Yumi. She didn't have a magic book, but she had a master who could do magic. Chapter 14, Dumbledore. Ivan, thank you. Let's not talk about Crookshanks first. Ivan's promise to lend the senior spells textbook to Hermione saved Hermione a lot of galleons. We are friends, aren't we? Ivan touched Hermione's fluffy hair, which made the little witch a little embarrassed. But Hermione didn't refuse. It must be admitted that Ivan's appearance alleviated the various uneasy emotions that Hermione had when she first entered the magic world. They're the same kind, from the same place, and are the only friends. This concept is like a seed that took root in Hermione's heart. Before leaving Diagon Alley, the two agreed to learn magic together. There's still 2 weeks before Hogwarts starts. Hermione plans to learn some magic in advance to avoid being bullied by those little wizards from wizard families after school. During this period, Ivan also asked Professor McGonagall about the trace. Tracking Thread is a tracking spell that can locate the approximate location of underage wizards and detect magical activities within a certain range around the underage wizards. When an underage wizard uses magic in front of a muggle or someone around him uses magic, the Ministry of Magic's improper use of magic office will be notified immediately. This notice will carry a contract magic to monitor underage wizards. Your wands have not been set with tracking threads yet. Professor McGonagall explained, tracking threads are not set on wands, but a kind of contract magic. At the end of the first year of Hogwarts students, they will receive a summer vacation notice stating that young wizards are not allowed to cast spells outside the school, and students are required to sign their names. In the wizarding world, the name itself contains magic, and this notice is also a contract which, to a certain extent, constrains every underage wizard studying in a magic school. In addition, when a young wizard violates the rules and casts a spell outside the school, the Ministry of Magic will receive a notice. The existence of a notice is based on a magic contract, so it will mark the location and time when a young wizard violates the rules. As for what magic was cast and who cast the magic, Trace could not judge. I see. Ivan nodded and decided to review the spells in the textbook with Hermione in the next 2 weeks and exchange experiences. Afterwards, the 3 of them had lunch at the Leaky Cauldron. McGonagall used apparition to send the 2 home, and then returned to Hogwarts Academy through the Flynn network. In the headmaster's office of Hogwarts, an old man stood behind the glass window. A head of silver-white hair, waist length so long that it could be stuffed into the belt, and blue eyes seemed to have magic, as if they could see through people. The old man's nose was very long, but twisted, and it seemed to have been broken at least twice. He is the headmaster of Hogwarts, the most powerful wizard in the wizarding world today, Albus Dumbledore. Albus. Suddenly, Professor McGonagall walked in from the headmaster's office. I have something to tell you. Professor McGonagall did not keep him in suspense and directly told Dumbledore all the things about Ivan, including what happened to him in Ollivander's wand shop. In order to be as detailed as possible, they even used the pensieve to observe Ivan more clearly in McGonagall's eyes. Ambrosius, the blood of the eternal family. Dumbledore listened to all this patiently. He naturally knew the legend of Merlin's descendants. It seems that our school will welcome another talented little wizard this year. Albus, Professor McGonagall widened his eyes as if puzzled by Dumbledore's calmness. Okay, I know. Dumbledore calmed Professor McGonagall's emotions. He opened a glass jar on the table, took out a struggling cockroach from it, and asked, "Would you like some?" Professor McGonagall took a deep breath and pretended to be calm. No, thank you. Although the cockroach pile was not real cockroaches, but made of enchanted syrup, the feeling of struggling in the mouth and the sound of bursting after biting. Professor McGonagall really couldn't accept this kind of weird candy. Crack, crack. Dumbledore chewed the cockroach pile and said calmly, "It seems that you care about that child, Minerva." "Yes, I am worried." Professor McGonagall did not continue, but Dumbledore knew what she meant. However, the old man shook his head and said, "They are different, Minerva. Once bitten by a snake, you will be afraid of the rope for 10 years. Professor McGonagall has a good impression of Ivan, but it is precisely because she likes this child very much that she hopes that Ivan can take the right path. To put it bluntly, Professor McGonagall is under too much pressure and is worried that she is not capable enough to teach Ivan well. She told Dumbledore about the matter, just to let the old man give Ivan more guidance to avoid Tom's problem again. Don't belittle yourself. Dumbledore looked into Professor McGonagall's eyes and smiled. You are the deputy headmaster of Hogwarts, my best transfiguration professor. The old man could understand Professor McGonagall's mood at this time. Just like when he found Tom Riddle, he was happy and worried. And we have to admit it. Dumbledore said, Tom is an excellent wizard, isn't he? Putting aside external factors, Voldemort's achievements in magic are indeed amazing. So, Dumbledore comforted McGonagall a few more words before sending her away. Ivan Ambrosius. After Professor McGonagall left, Dumbledore sat down slowly. The old man looked at the night sky outside the window, but the figure of Gellert Grindelwald emerged in his mind. Ambrosius's bloodline will bloom among the descendants of Merlin, and the last person who inherited part of the bloodline of the Eternal Family was Grindelwald. Of course, Grindelwald could not make accurate predictions in human body deformation at Ivan's age. The other two were not related by blood. After all, the descendants of Merlin were distributed all over Europe. This awakening was more like a miracle that magic randomly gave to wizards. He is better than you. Dumbledore marveled at Ivan's talent, but he did not consider whether this child would bring good or bad changes to the wizarding world. The only thing they could do was to give Ivan some experience as an elder, nothing more. Chapter 15. Trying the spell standing at the door of the orphanage, Ivan felt as if he was in another world. Next to Ivan was a card, on which were placed all kinds of things he bought in Diagon Alley. The two cages on the top held an owl and Yumi respectively. Compared to the dull owl, Yumi was looking at the Muggle world all the way with curiosity in his eyes. The fluffy little guy attracted many people's attention as soon as he arrived. Especially that agility, it was really lovable. Okay, we're home. Ivan pushed the gift into the orphanage, and after greeting Mrs. Mina and the staff, he went straight back to his room. Opening the cage, Ivan took Yumi out of the cage. The little guy didn't struggle. She was very smart and knew that Ivan was her master. Meow. After a cute cry, Yumi fell beside Ivan meekly. She looked around, but finally shook her head regretfully, as if she was a little disgusted with this shabby room. Well, the conditions are really bad. Ivan does understand cat language, but the intuition brought by the 4-point soul vision allows him to understand what Yumi means. Don't worry, I will have someone arrange a new house while I study at Hogwarts. When we come back from Hogwarts, we can live in the new house. Ivan has changed into someone else's appearance more than once in these years, and made primitive accumulation through football betting and gambling. Now, the money in his hands is enough for him to live a comfortable life. Not only that, Ivan also created a non-existent rich man out of nothing through various insurances, bank accounts, real estate, funds, and cash flow. In Ivan's plan, he will be adopted by this rich man and then move into a villa under the name of the rich man. This is what Ivan said, that he will leave the orphanage after the 1st grade. Meow, are you hungry, little guy? Ivan took out the snacks he bought in Diagon Alley from the box, poured some for Yumi, and took out the 1st grade spells textbook and started reading. Professor McGonagall said that the trace was cast during the first summer vacation of freshmen at Hogwarts. This means that in the next 2 weeks, Ivan can learn magic without any scruples, without worrying about being discovered by the Ministry of Magic. But you still have to be careful. The obscurus in Ivan's body is too powerful. and a careless move could cause great damage. Although he has a wand and can bring him amazing magic fluency, how to control magic is still a big problem. Let's try it first. Ivan opened the Standard Spells Elementary. He read the book very quickly, almost 10 lines at a glance. Spells are different from transfiguration spells. Spells add specific properties to an object or creature, while transfiguration spells will turn it into something completely different. In the first-year spells textbook, a total of 9 spells are recorded, namely, softening spell, cutting spell, unlocking spell, levitation spell, locking spell, repairing spell, repulsion spell, wand illumination spell, and fire spell. It doesn't seem that difficult. After reading the book, Ivan recalled it several times in his mind, then listed the key information and understood it in different categories. Let's try it first. Start with the simplest one. Theory is theory after all, and the specific effect of a spell still depends on the actual result of casting. Ivan pulled out the wand from his sleeve, turned the book over to the part recording the illumination spell, and then chanted the spell, Luminescent Flash. As the voice fell, a silver-white light lit up from the tip of the wand, like a small light source, bright but not dazzling, and with a sense of security that could illuminate the soul. Success. Ivan was not happy about his successful spell. He was not unfamiliar with magic, as he could cast spells without a wand and control the obscurus. Ivan was more concerned about the novel experience brought by this first spell with a wand. Just as I thought, the magic power in this world is not a kind of energy, but a force. In short, magic is like objects with different weights, and magic power is the strength needed to lift them. Take the spell Luminescent Flash as an example. The magic power it requires is extremely weak. Low magic power requirements mean that the magic power is weak and the difficulty of release will be relatively reduced. So how about this? This time, Ivan did not use a spell, but cast a spell without a spell. Almost at the moment when the magic wand was swung, Ivan knew that he had successfully cast the spell. However, with the successful casting of a spell, Ivan felt a sense of uneasiness in his heart. I seem to have used too much strength? No, meow. So, amid Yumi's screams, Ivan felt a dazzling white light blooming in front of his eyes. His eyes were stung by the white light, and even Yumi, who was eating, jumped up in fright and hit at Ivan's feet at the first time. Ah, sorry, Yumi, are you okay? Ivan was dazed for a while, rubbed his eyes, and recovered after a while. Looking at Yumi, who was climbing up by grabbing his trouser legs. Because of the previous commotion, snacks were scattered all over the floor, and the little guy was staring at Ivan with resentment, his eyes full of grievances. Well, life is ever-changing. We have to get used to this and that unexpected situation. In other words, cat, you will forgive your owner, right? Yumi didn't understand human language, but she could understand Ivan's perfunctory attitude. Meow. The cute little cat meowed in dissatisfaction, venting its dissatisfaction with its scumbag master. It was just an accident, I promise. Ivan smiled apologetically and understood the risk of the spell getting out of control. He picked up Yumi and put her on the table, and poured her a lot of cat food as an apology, and then licked her master's fingers again, as if saying, Bad master, Yumi forgives you. This little foodie, Ivan secretly complained, and his thoughts returned to the wrong spell just now. Just as I thought, the magic of the illumination spell cannot use too much magic power, otherwise it will cause unpredictable changes in the spell. Failure? Mistake. Ivan frowned slightly. No, I think this is more of an expansion, an improvement on the magic of fluorescent flashing. Low-level spells do not require high magic power, which means that if Ivan wants to cast the spell successfully, he needs to control his magic power. This is extremely difficult for him who has powerful magic powers. Chapter 16, Silent Casting. If the magic index of the successful casting of the illumination spell is 1, then Ivan was using 10 magic to cast this magic. Before, Ivan couldn't do this because he didn't have a magic wand. But now, with the help of the Phoenix wand, as long as Ivan can understand it, let alone the illumination spell, even the 20th level of the fiery spell, or even a magic with a difficulty of 30, Ivan has the confidence to perfectly control it. Yumi, Close your eyes. Thinking of this, Ivan took out a pair of sunglasses from the cabinet and closed the curtains again. Yumi got the hint from the master and quickly lay down and cutely covered her eyes. Everything was ready, and Ivan picked up the magic wand, recalled the feeling of casting without a spell just now, and waved the magic wand again. Buzz, still silent. The light, like a flash bomb, still bloomed in the room. However, this time, because of the advanced preparation, neither Ivan nor Yumi was affected by this spell. Interesting. Ivan took off his sunglasses and smiled. Just as I thought, as long as you remember the feeling when casting this spell, you can use it again. But what is this? Flash spell, or I-Z spell. Although he only tried one spell, Ivan successfully discovered that the same spell would have various changes due to different magic power. First of all, one thing can be confirmed: the effect of a spell is not proportional to the magic power strength. In short, the magic in this world is different from those in fantasy games. There will be no changes such as injecting more magic power into a small fireball, and the small fireball will become a big fireball or pyroblast. In fact, even if there is only a slight change in magic power, the release result of the same spell may be completely different. Just like the illumination spell, releasing it with a magic power of 1 is the illumination spell, and releasing it with a magic power of 10 is the flash spell. But this does not mean that the change in magic power from 1 to 10 is a change in brightness. The soul of up to 4 points warned Ivan, as if intuitively, warning him not to change the magic power strength of a spell at will. If it just fails, it's fine. If something unexpected happens, it's over. There's a clear record in Basic Spells Elementary that a wizard named Baruffio said S instead of F and found himself lying on the floor with a bison standing on his chest. This shows how dangerous it is to lose control of the spell. With Ivan's current magical attainments, it is easy to hurt himself if he modifies the spell at random. If he just takes the risk himself, Ivan is not afraid. As a silent person, even if he is hit by the blasting spell in the face, Ivan can be unscathed. But what about others? Yumi, the owl in this room, and even the friends and staff of the entire orphanage. These factors make Ivan have to be cautious. If you really want to start the experiment, either find an empty place or make full protection to prevent accidents. Come to think of it, I remember Harry Potter had a classmate who seemed to cast an explosive spell no matter what spell he cast. How did he do that? Ivan still couldn't understand the specific reason. The only thing he was sure of was that the reason why this little wizard was like this was definitely not as simple as an excess of magic power. In short, it's a bit exaggerated to increase magic power 10 times at once. Master the first year spells first. Soon, relying on a magic wand to comb the magic power, Ivan easily cast the 9 spells in the first grade textbook. There were no accidents, all in one go. It was as simple as instinct. In this process, Ivan successfully remembered the magic strength when these spells were successfully released. He did not try immediately, but chose to continue reading and spent an afternoon to firmly imprint the contents of the first grade textbook in his mind. After dinner, Ivan began to read the second grade spell textbook. There are a total of 6 spells recorded in the second grade textbook, namely the dance spell, the expansion spell, the freezing spell, the universal breaking spell, the forgetting spell, and the creaking spell. Like the spells that need to be learned in the first grade, with the help of the magic wand, Ivan successfully released these magics in just one time. Among these spells, Ivan took out the freezing spell separately. He used the magic wand to release the freezing spell over and over again in order to more clearly experience the magic power required to release this spell. During this process, Ivan discovered another interesting aspect of magic, which is that using spells requires a firm will. The role of the will attribute is to stabilize the output of magic power, which is specifically manifested in being able to cast spells smoothly and ensuring that magic does not get out of control. For example, the freezing spell, this magic is more like reducing the speed of molecular movement in the scientific theory of the previous life than the freezing spell. Of course, it is not completely the same, but it is somewhat similar. The effect of the freezing spell is to slow down the movement of objects. Its manifestation is a bit like time deceleration, allowing the life and non-life under the spell to move at a slow speed. So when casting this spell, you need to unswervingly slow things down. Ivan felt that the essence of the spell was probably a psychological suggestion to strengthen his heart. Casting without spells is because you are skilled enough and have integrated the spell into your instinct. Just like your mother tongue, when you see the word horse, you can immediately think of the animal horse. In a final analysis, it is still the basic cognition of people. If that's the case, Ivan closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and then raised his wand. Yumi, who was standing by, saw this scene and immediately slapped the empty snack box on the table. This was exactly the cooperation and help that Ivan asked Yumi to give when he was learning the freezing spell. Slow down. Ivan opened his eyes and waved the wand in his hand, providing the magic power needed for the freezing spell while concentrating all his will. Silently, the box just floated in the air. If you look closely, you will find that the box is falling bit by bit at an extremely slow speed according to the original trajectory. Successful! Ivan's eyes lit up, and his hand holding the wand tightened slightly. Just as I thought, the essence of a spell is a strong psychological suggestion. The 3 words "slow down" that Ivan just silently recited in his heart were in his mother tongue in his previous life, that is, Chinese. No, it cannot be said to be Chinese. To be correct, it should be his understanding and need for the concept of slow down. So, Ivan succeeded and successfully cast a silent freezing spell rather than silently reciting the spell. However, Ivan was not satisfied with this achievement. He continued to practice, hoping to analyze the magic power required for the freezing spell through repeated casting. Chapter 17, Magical Memory. The second-year spells are indeed more troublesome than the first-year spells. Ivan found that he only cast the first-year spells once and analyzed what kind of magic power was needed to successfully cast these spells. However, the second-year freezing spell is more complicated than the first-year one. It took him a full hour to master the magic strength of releasing the freezing spell. If the magic power of the illumination spell is 1 scale, then the release of the freezing spell requires 3 scales, and in this process, it is necessary to maintain a clear cognition, that is, to concentrate. Ivan has an adult soul and has lived 2 lives. Therefore, his will is much more determined than those little wizards in the first and second grades. In addition, the scale here is compared with the illumination spell as the basic unit. According to Ivan's feelings, if he gives up the sycamore wand, he can only release magic below scale 2. If there are more, Ivan's magic power will be out of control, and then various accidents will occur. Is it because of lack of proficiency? Next, Ivan began to practice the silent freezing spell over and over again, and only put down the wand when he felt that he was almost there. At this time, the sky outside the window was approaching dusk. Calculating the time, Ivan actually practiced the freezing spell silently for more than 4 hours alone. Ivan relaxed. Fortunately, wizards in this world have no concept of mana. As long as they are energetic, they can cast spells endlessly. Thinking of this, Ivan put the wand into his sleeve and put it back to the easiest place to take it out. Ivan clapped his hands a few times and took a few deep breaths to completely relax his body and mind. Then now, let's try the wandless casting of the freezing spell. For this, Ivan also divined for himself once. The result: Ivan didn't see the scene of his successful casting, but he saw himself eating breakfast safely the next day. Beside him, Yumi was also happily eating. Very good. Ivan got the answer he wanted. Then let's start. Yumi, the ragdoll cat, saw Ivan's hint in his eyes and immediately slapped the already tattered box away. This time, Ivan did not use a wand or make any gestures. He just stood there, staring at the flying box. Quickly stop. Ivan focused his attention and then recited the spell of the freezing spell with great accuracy. Silently, the box that was still falling quickly just stopped in midair. If you look closely, you can find that the box did not stop completely, but was still falling. This effect is exactly the same as the freezing spell. It really worked. Ivan was extremely excited by the success of the wandless spell. Sure enough, Ivan thought to himself, the proficiency of spells is like muscle memory. Not only silent spells, but also wandless spells can be cast silently and without a wand. But Ivan felt it and frowned. It seems that there is only the magic of the freezing spell. Ivan's wandless spellcasting level is still at the second scale, which is the limitation of his own attributes. The difficulty of the freezing spell is 3 scales, which is 3 times that of the illumination spell. But because his proficiency is high enough, Ivan relied on his current level to perform exceptionally well. This also means that even if Ivan does not add points, as long as he can improve the proficiency of each subsequent magic, he can complete the casting without a wand. This can be regarded as solving a problem. The wizards in the Harry Potter world rely too much on the wand. Ivan must be prepared to lose the wand or fight without a wand. After dinner, Ivan fed Yumi and the newly bought owl again, and then picked up the wand again and started practicing other spells in the spell textbook. This time, Ivan practiced the skills of wandless casting. He did not choose the magic that was beyond his tolerance in the 2nd grade, but chose the safer levitation spell in the 1st grade spell. The levitation spell is the most famous spell in the Harry Potter world. The spell, Wingardium Leviosa, is something that almost everyone who has seen the movie has heard of. The magic scale of the levitation spell is between 2 and 3. Ivan discovered something interesting. That is, the smallest unit of the magic scale does not seem to be the illumination spell because the levitation spell has a decimal. Not 2.5, but 1/3. In terms of data, to release the levitation spell, you need to use 2.3 scales of the illumination spell. Similarly, this is also a magic that exceeds Ivan's current wandless casting ability. Fortunately, after repeated hard practice, when Ivan was able to control floating objects at will while holding a magic wand, he successfully mastered the wandless casting technique of the levitation spell. But soon, Ivan noticed something that made him unhappy. Ivan originally thought that he could practice some magic with a magic wand, and then continued to push it towards a state of wandless casting. But soon he found that the wandless spells he could remember were limited. Of course, the limitation here is not the limitation of skill bar and spell slot, but Ivan's magic memory, which is similar to muscle memory and has an upper limit. When Ivan is proficient in some magic and can cast it without a wand, if he adds more, the previous memory will gradually become blurred. Ivan summed it up and found that he can remember about 10 magics and cast them without a wand. In addition, Ivan is currently unable to cast magic without a wand for magic with a difficulty of more than 5 scales. Is it because the 3 attributes of thinking, will, and mind are too low? Ivan opened his attribute panel. System, open my attributes. Attributes soul, 4 rare, magic. 5 legendary, constitution. 1 ordinary, thinking. 3 outstanding, mind. 2 excellent, will. 2 excellent. 1 point is in the category of ordinary people, while 2 points are evaluated as excellent by the system. As far as I can guess, the strength of magic power determines the upper limit of a wizard. Ivan sat on the bed, holding Yumi in his arms, petting the cat, and thinking. If you don't have enough magic power, no matter how hard you try, you can't release powerful magic. Just like Ivan, he doesn't know the limit of the scale that the magic power brought by the 5-point magic attribute can move. Because there are too few reference spells, Ivan can't determine the limit of his magic 5 attribute. The difficulty of the freezing spell is just over 3 scales, and the magic with the highest mana requirement in the basic spell from grade 1 to 4 is only about 10 scales. For example, the armor spell is not among the basic spells, but a spell that can only be learned in the 5th grade. Ivan, who has read the original Harry Potter, remembers the spell of this magic. Pertigo. Thinking about protecting your beliefs in your heart, and then reciting the spell, an invisible transparent shield will condense in front of the wand to resist attacks from the front. Chapter 18. Boarding at the Granger house, armor protection. Standing up from the bed again, Ivan waved his wand, but the result was a bit regrettable. He failed to cast the armor spell. Ivan tried several more times, but without exception, they all ended in failure. What's going on? Ivan frowned. My magic power is definitely enough, but why can't I cast it? Suddenly, Ivan thought of the description of the armor spell. You need to have a strong belief in protecting yourself. Strong, protect yourself belief. Yummy. Ivan thought of a way. He picked up the box on the ground and threw it in front of his cute ragdoll cat. Come on, hit the box towards me. Meow. Yumi didn't quite understand what Ivan wanted to do, but the obedient cat followed the owner's order obediently. The ragdoll cat waved its claws and slapped the box towards Ivan's forehead. Armor protects me. Seeing something flying towards his face at a high speed, Ivan waved his wand reflexively, and a faint white light emerged from the tip of the wand, which quickly disappeared. Pop! The next moment, the box collided with the air in front of Ivan, as if it had hit an invisible wall. Success! Ivan couldn't help but curl up his lips. He picked up Yumi and laughed. No wonder the armor curse failed. It turns out that this kind of magic needs to contain emotions to be cast. Ivan was very satisfied that he could comprehend the armor curse on his own without a teacher. You know, this is a magic that even many Aurors in the Ministry of Magic cannot cast proficiently, and Ivan is just a little wizard who has not yet entered school. So he continued to work hard, and Ivan began to consolidate the magic of the armor curse. He first spent 2 hours practicing wand casting and another hour practicing silent casting techniques. Unfortunately, the requirements of the armor curse were too high, and Ivan could not memorize it as his own wandless magic for the time being. According to estimates, the magic power of the armor spell is about 10, which is 10 times heavier than the illumination spell. The wand is a great invention. Ivan put the wand down, then picked it up again to experience the effect of the wand. As mentioned before, Ivan's sycamore wand is very suitable for him. Ivan can successfully release most of the textbooks from grade 1 to grade 4 after trying a few times. Of course, the effect and power are definitely not guaranteed. This requires sufficient proficiency and attributes that Ivan does not know. That's all for today. Ivan glanced at the alarm clock on the bedside table. Unknowingly, it was almost 9 o'clock. This means that Ivan has practiced magic for nearly 8 hours since he came back. There's no change in my body, but I'm a little tired mentally. Ivan feels that casting a spell is like solving a problem. Although the body will not be tired, the mental consumption is extremely serious. Meow. Even Yumi seemed to be affected by Ivan and began to yawn. Ivan rested well that night. In addition, Ivan found that after he cast a series of spells, the violent Momo in his body seemed to be much calmer. How should I put it? It was like finding an outlet for the Momo, who was usually somewhat unsatisfied, to vent. Ivan didn't know if this would ease the thread of the Obscurus, but he had nothing else to do now. Practicing spells and learning new spells were what Ivan was very interested in. In contrast, the calmness of the Obscurus was a pleasant surprise. Suddenly, Ivan, who was washing in the public bathroom, saw a picture in the mirror in front of him. It was an owl. There was a letter tied to its claws, and Ivan saw Hermione's name on it. Obviously, this was a passive trigger of divination. Hermione's letter to me? Ivan quickly took care of his personal hygiene. He returned to his room and then opened the window next to him. After waiting for a while, Hermione's owl arrived as expected. Coo! Ivan took the letter down, and then, without using a wand, he used the levitation spell to summon a bowl of cereal, indicating that the owl was welcome. Soon, Ivan finished reading the letter sent by Hermione. The little witch invited Ivan to visit her home. After learning about Ivan's existence, knowing that he was also born as a muggle, and that the orphanage where Hermione lived was not far from their home, Hermione's parents hoped that Ivan could live in the Granger family for a few days. Obviously, Hermione had her own intention. The little witch seemed to be planning to make up for her magic knowledge before the start of school at Hogwarts. Ivan was a descendant of Merlin. Hermione was proud, but the little witch knew that her talent was not as good as Ivan's. Of course, this was nothing. Facing a learned person, Hermione would not be jealous, but would work harder to learn humbly. Although the two were of similar age, in Hermione's eyes, Ivan was like a talented, humble, and gentle senior who was worthy of her serious study. Boarding for a while, Ivan thought about it and felt that Hermione's proposal seemed good. First of all, he had to practice magic, but the house in the orphanage was too small. In addition, Ivan was worried that he would be seen casting spells, and he didn't want to cast the forgetfulness spell on familiar people. Living in Hermione's house, not only can he communicate and study with the little witch, but the space for casting spells will be much larger. In short, this invitation can save Ivan a lot of trouble in the 2 weeks before school starts. Thank you for your invitation. After making a decision, Ivan immediately wrote a reply, and then waited patiently in the orphanage according to Mr. Granger's request. At about 9 o'clock in the morning, Mr. Granger drove to the orphanage where Ivan was. Mr. Granger showed his dental qualification certificate, and Ivan agreed to stay at Mr. Granger's house for a few days, because he and Mr. Granger's daughter were admitted to the same college. The two of them studying together can better adapt to the upcoming college life. Mrs. Mina only thought for a moment, and after asking Ivan to call her every day to report safety, she agreed to their request. Great, Ivan. In the car, the little witch excitedly shared with Ivan the various magical knowledge she had seen yesterday. Those books are really well written, especially the basic spells for first graders. I successfully cast a spell yesterday. Magic is so amazing. Thinking of the surprised expressions of her parents after she successfully cast a spell, Hermione is now a little bit unbelievable. Chapter 19, Platform 9 and 3/4, yeah. Ivan nodded, and he looked at Mr. Granger in the driver's seat. Thank you for your invitation, Mr. Granger. I feel lucky. Mr. Granger's tone was also a little excited. By the way, can I call you Ivan? Of course. Little Ivan. Mr. Granger, I heard from Hermione that you have mastered a lot of magic. When we get there later, can we? Mr. Granger, I am just like you, an ordinary person living in this world. Ivan told the other party not to be so polite and just treat him as his daughter's classmate. But as for magic, I do know a lot. Just like Hermione said, the spells in the textbook are not difficult. Really? Mr. Granger smiled happily, but the little witch was a little depressed. Ivan, how many magics have you learned? I only learned the lighting spell and the repair spell. Well, Ivan did not intend to hide his talent. As I said, Ivan planned to live a more relaxed life in this life. Snap! Ivan snapped his fingers, and some small objects that were originally placed behind Hermione and Ivan flew up one after another. So, in the astonished eyes of Mr. Granger, Ivan controlled these things to fly and chase in the back seat area of the car, which made the father and daughter quite incredible. Mr. Granger was surprised because he had never seen such magic. As for Hermione, she was half an expert, so she knew what Ivan had just done. That was wandless casting. No, Ivan, you cast the levitation spell without even chanting the spell, Hermione exclaimed. Oh my God, Ivan, you can cast this magic silently and without a wand. If Ivan's talent was only slightly higher than Hermione's, the little witch would still feel pressured. However, Ivan's talent was really amazing. The boy in front of her was so powerful that Hermione could not compare him. Is this amazing? Mr. Granger did not know the value of silent and wandless casting. He just simply thought it was amazing. Very impressive. Hermione looked at Ivan and asked if he could tell his father about his bloodline. Actually, it's no big deal. Seeing Mr. Granger's puzzled look in the rearview mirror, Ivan smiled and said, I only found out where my talent came from when I bought my wand yesterday. Talent, Dad, Hermione said with great pride. Ivan is a descendant of Merlin. What? Mr. Granger was stunned for a moment. Merlin is that Merlin? The one in the legend of King Arthur. That Merlin. Hermione. I was also shocked when I heard it for the first time. That's really amazing. For Mr. Granger, wizards and magic alone are already very impressive. Descendants of Merlin. Granger couldn't imagine what this concept was. Ahem. It's not that exaggerated. Ivan found that Mr. Granger looked at him as if he was looking at a mythical figure, such as the Son of God, Jesus, which made Ivan very embarrassed. But the little witch did not explain, but continued to deepen her father's impression of Ivan. Even in the wizarding world, the descendants of Merlin are just a legend. No wizard has ever seen. I think Ivan may become the Merlin of this era in the future. What is Ivan's unremitting praise? This is it. We are here. Mr. Granger parked the car beside a clean and tidy street. Welcome to visit, Ivan. The Granger family is a three-story villa surrounded by bushes, and not far from the street is their dental clinic. In England, dentists are high-paying jobs, so the Granger family is in good financial condition, a well-off family. Mrs. Granger is a typical British lady, and she warmly welcomed Ivan's arrival. After Ivan put his luggage in the room prepared for him by Mrs. Granger, the four of them had a sumptuous lunch together. During the period, Ivan performed many magic tricks for the three people, which opened the eyes of the Granger couple and also won the praise and envy of Hermione. In the afternoon, the little witch began to ask Ivan for magic knowledge. Ivan shared his understanding of magic, and with his help, Hermione soon successfully cast the basic spells of the first grade, which made her very happy. At dinner, Hermione also showed off her wand in front of her parents, causing the couple to exclaim repeatedly, "We have a smart little witch in our family." In this way, time flies, and it is the last day of August in the blink of an eye. According to the ticket in the admission letter, Mr. Granger sent Ivan and Hermione to King's Cross Station. Really don't need Dad and Mom to accompany you? The Granger couple wanted to accompany Hermione, but the little witch told her parents not to worry. With Ivan, there is nothing to worry about. After nearly half a month of getting along, the relationship between Ivan and Hermione has made great progress, and they have almost become good friends who can talk about anything. In addition, both of them are from the Muggle world, so it is not an exaggeration to say that they are childhood sweethearts. "Uncle Aunt," Ivan said seriously, "don't worry. I will take good care of Hermione. Then I'll leave it to you, little Ivan." "Hermione, listen to little Ivan when you get to school." The couple had a very good impression of Ivan. In their eyes, Ivan was obviously more reliable than Hermione. Got it. Got it." Hermione waved goodbye to the two of them in dissatisfaction. The little witch pulled Ivan over and started to enter the station with her luggage. Seeing that their daughter did not look nostalgic at all, the Granger couple looked at each other, and they were quite amused. Platform 9 3/4. Looking at the platform written on the ticket, Hermione looked at Ivan in confusion. "Ivan, have you seen this platform? There are platforms 9 and 10, but there is no platform 9 3/4. Ivan naturally knew where this platform was. Even if he didn't know, with his sole attribute of 4 points, as long as he opened his spiritual vision, he could find traces of magic around. Look at them. Without waiting for Ivan to remind her, Hermione noticed several people dressed strangely, rushing into a wall with their children. It seems that the platform should be between platforms 10 and 9. The two looked at each other and imitated those people, rushing into the wall one after another. Ivan only felt that his body passed through a thin film of nothingness. When they opened their eyes again, they saw a crimson steam locomotive parked next to the platform, full of passengers. Chapter 20. Neville. The sign on the train read, "Hogwarts Express, 11 o'clock. The two looked back and saw that the place where the ticket gate used to be had now become a wrought iron archway with the words, "Platform 9 and March 4th" written on it. The thick smoke from the steam locomotive lingered above the chattering crowd, and cats of various colors darted around under people's feet. Amid the buzzing of the crowd and the noise of dragging heavy luggage, owls also hooted harshly, one calling the other. "Ivan, I'm a little nervous." Hermione kept looking around, her attention mainly focused on the little wizards who were similar to them. The little witch was very worried that her magic level could not keep up with the teaching at Hogwarts, and she was also afraid that the little wizards from wizard families would look down on her. "You have to believe in yourself, Hermione." Ivan smiled and said, "You are very good, definitely not worse than them." Ivan said this from the bottom of his heart. The half-month of getting along with each other allowed Ivan to see Hermione's talent. In his estimation, if Hermione's talent is revealed in the form of attributes, except for the soul, mind, and physique, which cannot be judged, Hermione's best attribute should be thinking attribute. The little witch's memory and logical analysis ability are extremely amazing. Even Ivan, who has 3 points of thinking attribute, can't compare with her. From this, it can be inferred that Hermione's thinking attribute is likely to have reached 4 points. You know, reaching 3 points of attribute is outstanding, which means 1 in a million. And like Hermione, It is not an exaggeration to say that it is rare to see someone like her in the magic world for decades. Except for thinking, Hermione's magic power should not be high, but only reached 2 points of excellence. However, Ivan thinks that Hermione's magic talent should also be in the forefront among the excellent ones, close to 3, but not reaching the level. Then there is the attribute of will. Ivan thinks Hermione's self-discipline is amazing. Think about it. A person who can spend all his time on studying and thinks that doing exercises, taking exams, and reciting are fun. Ivan just wants to say that her perseverance is so terrifying. Ivan can spend time learning magic, but Hermione is a super student who can memorize every book she has read. Anyway, Ivan can never do Hermione's level. Even if he has 2 lives, Ivan's willpower in his previous life is not that strong. Therefore, he doesn't think there is anything wrong with not being as good as Hermione in terms of will. In addition, the attribute is fixed, and it will not happen that the will of 12-year-old Hermione's enrollment age is 12 years old, is 3, and the willpower increases after adulthood. 3 points of will refers to growth, not the current value. For example, suppose Hermione and Professor McGonagall both have a thinking attribute of 4, but the latter's thinking ability is obviously stronger than the former. Similarly, Ivan's magic power is 5, but he can only say that he is stronger than the 11-year-old Dumbledore. Thinking 4, magic 2 will 3. Such attributes have surpassed most wizards, and Hermione in the original book finally became the Minister of Magic, which is a manifestation of her excellent talent. But I'm still a little worried. Hermione began to recite the textbooks she had read before, so as to make herself forget the terrible future of being crushed by other little wizards. This scene made Ivan laugh and cry. Let's go, let's find a seat. Ivan and Hermione pushed the cart forward on the platform, ready to find an empty compartment. The first few carriages were already crowded with students. Some of them leaned out of the window to talk to their families, and some were playing in the seats. Soon, the two found a compartment with only a round-faced boy sitting in it. "Excuse me, can we sit here?" Ivan manipulated the levitation spell to make the gift float behind him. Hermione poked her head out from behind him and looked at the boy in front of her carefully. "Well, he doesn't look very smart." "Yes, you can." The boy sat inside shyly, lowering his head and looking very shy. "Ivan Ambrosius, this is my friend Hermione." Hermione Granger. After the two sat down, they introduced themselves. "My name is Neville." Neville said timidly. Neville Longbottom. "Hello." Ivan said to himself that the boy in front of him was the hidden savior in the original Harry Potter book, the Gryffindor Swordmaster. Thinking so, Ivan manipulated the gift to let them float to a high place by themselves and piled his own cage, Hermione's owl, and Crookshank's cage in the corner of the carriage. Amazing. Neville was stunned by this scene. "How did you do it?" "I mean, Neville, you can do magic." Hermione was confused. She asked in confusion, "Are you from the Muggle world like us?" "No, my family are all wizards." Neville's voice was not loud. He looked at Ivan, his eyes full of envy and admiration. "But I can't do magic." According to Neville's description, his talent was very poor, which made many members of his family think that he was not qualified to go to Hogwarts. Once, Neville's uncle threw him out of the window, but he bounced up by himself without causing any harm, which made his family very happy. When they received the admission letter from Hogwarts, Grandma and others were very happy. Neville has a good personality. Ivan and Hermione quickly became friends with him, and then began to share each other's experiences and family information. Neville had no aversion to the fact that the two were born in Muggle families. Although the Longbottom family is pure blood, they're not opposed to half-blood and Muggle wizards. "Ivan, you are amazing." This is the nth time Neville has said this. Hermione asked, "Ivan is of course amazing, but haven't you seen a little wizard as smart as Ivan?" In Hermione's opinion, children from wizard families must be very amazing. They must have learned magic since childhood, and each of them is a knowledgeable genius. Well, except Neville. According to Neville, he doesn't know any magic. Hermione thinks this should be an exception. "I've never seen it." The Longbottom family also has relatives and friends, but Neville has never seen a little wizard like Ivan who has mastered magic before entering school. Especially when Ivan casts a spell, It seems that he doesn't even use a wand. How did you do it just now? Neville asked curiously. I heard from my grandmother that you need a wand to cast magic, but even if I get a wand, I don't know how to cast magic. Chapter 21. One for all. That's wandless spell casting, Ivan said, and then gestured to Hermione, saying, although Hermione can't do it yet, she has mastered a lot of magic. Really? Ahem. The little witch raised her head proudly, then elegantly drew out her wand, ready to show off in front of Neville. After all, she was the first little wizard from a wizard family they knew, and Hermione wanted Neville to evaluate whether her level was qualified. Repair as good as new. Hermione noticed the cut on Neville's clothes that had been cut at some point, and she waved her wand and used the repair spell to restore the damage. Thank you, thank you. Neville hurriedly thanked him and praised. Hermione, you are also very good. Not bad, not bad. The little witch lowered her head shyly. She just didn't want to lose to those little wizards from wizard families, not really like to show off. Suddenly hearing Neville's heartfelt praise, even Hermione felt a little embarrassed. While the three were talking, the train had already left London. There was a loud noise of click, click in the aisle, and a smiling woman with dimples pushed open the compartment door and asked, Dear, do you want to buy any food on the bus? I want a licorice wand. Neville touched his pocket and began to look for the pocket money given by his grandmother. Hermione, who was sitting next to Ivan, also had bright eyes. She was very curious about the food in the wizarding world. Hello. Seeing this, Ivan took out a few galleons directly. Please give me some. Hermione thought Ivan was a bit wasteful of money, but Ivan said that he was very interested in wizard food and wanted to taste as much as possible. We can take it to Hogwarts if we can't finish it, so it won't be wasted. Soon, all kinds of food were piled up between Ivan and Hermione. BB multi-flavor beans, puff super bubble gum, chocolate frog, pumpkin pie, crucible cake, licorice wand, and some strange foods that the two had never seen in Diagon Alley. These things cost Ivan 13 silver sickles and 4 bronze nuts. How to say it? The prices in the wizarding world are really not expensive. Child, do you want more? On the other side, Neville was in trouble. He didn't know where the money his grandmother gave him was. Let's eat together. Seeing this, Ivan invited Neville to share the snacks around him with him. And by the way, solve the problem that Hermione wanted to pay for her share. This time, it was equivalent to Ivan paying for 3 people to eat. Even Hermione couldn't refuse. Thank you. Neville looked at Ivan gratefully, thanking him for helping him out. My memory has always been bad, and I always forget things. Ivan knew that Neville's memory problem was most likely because he was cast a forget spell when he was a child. However, Neville is not without talent, but it is not the time for him to make a breakthrough. You know, Neville will become a professor of herbology at Hogwarts in the future, which fully proves his talent in herbology. Let's eat first. Ivan and Hermione only had a few slices of bread in the morning and were already hungry. They each picked a bag of snacks. Ivan chose chocolate frogs. He was quite interested in this wizard candy when he watched the movie. Hermione chose the licorice wand. She thought that Neville, who came from a wizard family, would choose it, and it must taste good. This is quite interesting. Ivan opened the box, and the chocolate frog inside jumped out impatiently. Unfortunately, Ivan just stretched out his finger and froze the chocolate frog that wanted to run around in midair. It was the freezing spell in the 10 wandless magic he recorded. Wow! Neville was once again impressed by Ivan's show. The round-faced boy opened his mouth wide and didn't even notice that the half-eaten pumpkin pie fell on the table. Wake up! Ivan waved his hand in front of Neville's eyes, then tapped the chocolate frog floating in the air with his finger and asked, How do you eat this? Put it in your mouth directly. Yes, just eat it directly. It feels weird. Ivan didn't care about Neville's surprised look. He played with the chocolate frog for a while, thinking about what magic was cast on it, and put it in his mouth. As if anticipating the fate of being eaten, the chocolate frog kept struggling in Ivan's mouth. That feeling made Ivan frown. Well, it would be better to bite off the head first. This is the experience of Neville, who has eaten countless chocolate frogs and is known as the chocolate frog killer. Hermione, who was eating a licorice wand on the side, frowned slightly. She knew that Neville was kind, but this statement made people feel a little sick. Crunch, crunch. Ivan accepted Neville's advice and chewed quickly. Ivan had a vague feeling that as the chocolate frog was bitten, the magic on it began to disappear, and with it, a rich sweetness spread in his mouth. It tastes good. I have never eaten chocolate of this flavor. Not only in this life, Ivan has never eaten it in both his lives. It can only be said that the food in the wizarding world is indeed unique. In this way, the three of them talked and laughed, sharing interesting stories about the wizarding world and the muggle world with each other. Meow. The cat's cry attracted the attention of the three people. Hermione looked at Ivan. Ivan, you seem to have forgotten to release Yumi. Ivan slapped his forehead and then used the levitation spell to move the cat bag placed high in front of him. Meow. After breaking free from the shackles of the backpack, Yumi, who saw the light of day again, called Ivan a few times with resentment. The latter apologized. I will treat you to snacks. Please forgive me, Yumi. The ragdoll cat grumbled for a while, then swung its fluffy tail and began to pick food that suited her taste on the sofa. Yumi, come here. Hermione waved at Yumi, who did not hesitate to pick up a snack and jumped into Hermione's arms. After half a month of getting along, Yumi had already become familiar with Hermione. Compared to Ivan, Hermione is more like Yumi's master. The little witch also released Crookshanks. At once, a ragdoll cat as pretty as a fairy and a big-faced cat with a face like a persimmon appeared in the carriage. Crookshanks is a female cat like Yumi. It is older than Yumi, and when it was at Hermione's house, it took good care of the petite Yumi. Your pets are so cute. Seeing the two cats, one big and one small, Neville couldn't help but think of his pet Toad. But when Neville was about to introduce his own riff to the two, the boy's face suddenly changed because he found that his pet Toad had disappeared. Chapter 22. Draco and Harry. If life could just be like first meeting Liv. Neville's shout startled Hermione, and the little witch asked, What? My Live is missing. Looking at Neville's anxious look, Hermione wanted to know what Live was. Live is the toad I raised. Hermione felt creepy when she heard someone keep a toad as a pet. But the little witch didn't question it. After all, it's normal for wizards to keep some strange things, which is completely in line with the stereotype of muggles about wizards. Don't worry. Think carefully about when you last saw it. Hermione was a helpful person, and when she saw Neville in trouble, she immediately started to help him find a pet. Neville was their new friend, and seeing the shy boy looking like he was about to cry, even Ivan joined in. However, the three of them searched for a while, but they couldn't find Live in the carriage. Ivan, don't you know the flying spell? Hermione remembered a magic that Ivan had mastered, which was a spell that only seniors could learn, and she had only seen Ivan use it a few times. But the kind of magic that could instantly summon what you want was not suitable for the current situation. Sorry, Hermione, this spell cannot be used to summon creatures. The flying spell is also known as the summoning spell, and the spell is something flies. Although in the movie, the flying spell often shows things flying towards the wizard. But in fact, the flying spell can make the summoned things appear in front of the wizard instantly. In addition, the flying spell cannot be used on large buildings and most living things. Although it can be summoned by flying through the container or carrier where the creature is located, it is likely to cause harm to the summoned creature because the moving speed is close to the speed of light. Ivan felt that if he cast this magic, Rive might not die, but he would definitely become miserable. And with continuous practice, Ivan found that there was a reason why this spell had two names. If the object is not in sight, it is a summoning spell, otherwise it is a flying spell. The summoning spell cannot summon living creatures, but the flying spell does not have this restriction, such as the flying spell in Fantastic Beasts. The current situation is obviously not suitable for casting this spell. Is that so? Hermione has never seen the senior spell textbook that records the flying spell. Then what should I do? Riff. Neville was very cowardly, and when he found that Riff could not be found, he became even more at a loss. Ivan did not blame Neville for his behavior. What could Ivan ask of an 11-year-old child? Finally, seeing Neville start to drop small pearls, Hermione really couldn't bear it and decided to go out and ask others if they had seen Neville's toad. Ivan did not go, but stayed in the carriage to comfort Neville. However, he sent his own Yumi to accompany Hermione and her Crookshanks. I remember that in the original book, Neville's toad seemed to appear at the end of the semester, and later joined the same kind in the Black Lake. Ivan shook his head. He felt that Neville's toad had run its course with him. As the saying goes, it's better to part ways amicably, so it's better not to interfere. Of course, if this is the plot of the movie, Rafe should return to Neville before the sorting ceremony. Ivan. Soon after, Hermione walked in excitedly from outside the carriage. As soon as the little witch sat down, she excitedly said, "Do you know who I saw just now? It's Harry Potter, the boy who survived." Just like in the original book, Hermione met those two useless men. Ivan actually had some feelings for Harry Potter. A child in his teens had the courage to fight against the killer and faced three-headed dogs, basilisks, dementors, fire dragons, dark wizards, and other terrible creatures, and finally defeated his fateful enemy. To be honest, if any other child were in Harry's position, who could say that he could be stronger and braver than Harry? At least Ivan couldn't do it himself. So, Ivan never looked down on Harry. This is a good child who is kind, simple, brave, and sentimental. From the perspective of making friends, Harry is definitely a good choice. The only problem is the conspiracy theory mentioned in the fan fiction Ivan had read before, such as Harry is a pawn of Dumbledore and has been calculated all his life. Well, this needs to be paid attention to. Ivan didn't want to get involved in Dumbledore's script. If possible, he wanted to pull Hermione out of the quagmire and turn the original story into the two useless men. Want to go and see it? Hermione was like a little girl who wanted to share toys with her friends. She even forgot to help Neville find a toad. At this time, Ivan glanced at Neville and found that he was completely immersed in the food. Poor Leaf. Ivan mourned for Neville's toad, and then followed Hermione to the compartment where Harry was. Ivan and Hermione walked in the aisle, and soon came to the compartment where Harry was. However, there were three little wizards standing outside the compartment at this time. The leader was a pale blonde boy, and the other two were sturdy, but they looked a little weird. Did this scene happen here? Ivan immediately recognized the identities of the three people. The blonde boy was Draco Malfoy, and the boy standing next to him like a bodyguard should be his right-hand man, Crabbe and Goyle. In the movie, the first meeting between the two was put before the sorting ceremony. But in the novel, Harry had a life if life could be seen against the first time meeting with Malfoy on the train. Wait. Hermione wanted to step forward, but was pulled by Ivan. The little witch looked at him puzzled, but heard Ivan say, "They seem to have something to say. Let's not get involved." Okay. Hermione trusted Ivan very much, and immediately leaned against the window obediently, giving up the aisle position to avoid causing trouble to others. At this moment, not only Ivan and Hermione, but other little wizards also noticed the movement here and looked out. Is it true? Malfoy enjoyed the attention of the crowd, and he said with a hint of sarcasm, "People on the whole train are talking about Harry Potter in this compartment. So it's you, right?" Yes. Harry has seen too many people who come here because of his reputation, and he is almost used to it. It's just that Malfoy gave Harry a bad impression. That arrogant and superior attitude made Harry think of a word: pretentious. To be honest, Harry didn't want to contact people like Malfoy. However, looking at the two big and strong goalkeepers standing next to Malfoy, Harry decisively chose to follow his heart. "Oh, this is Crabbe, this is Goyle." Malfoy found that Harry was looking at them, and introduced them casually, and then said solemnly, "As for me, my name is Malfoy, Draco Malfoy." Chapter 23, Brother Dung Puff. Ronald coughed lightly to avoid laughing out loud. Draco Malfoy's face darkened. He looked at Ronald and said dissatisfiedly, "Is my name funny?" Draco means dragon in English. If Malfoy's name is placed in China, it would probably be like Long Out Yin, Li Hong Jun, Du Lu Dao, and Chinitian. It's like putting the words from online novels into the real world as names, which seems particularly second year. Especially with his last name Malfoy, Evil Sin, Ivan dared to use Evil Dragon, to name his child. Ivan really didn't know how big the heart of old Malfoy was. In addition, Ivan prefers to call him Drajan. No need to ask who you are. While Ivan was thinking about it, Malfoy had already started his verbal offensive. My father told me that the Weasleys all have red hair, freckles all over their faces, and they have too many children to raise. You will soon find that some wizard families are much better than others, Potter. Malfoy turned to Harry and said, "You don't want to make friends with people who are different, do you?" Ivan felt that the old Malfoy was probably jealous.
No more novels? Take part in the voting. The most requested novels and those with the most likes will be chosen for publication on euroaudiobooks.com. There, I can upload as much as I want without the risk of receiving a strike. Our 18 novels and other content that exceed what is morally acceptable are only published on Patreon or the free novels page. Remember, the site is funded by donations on Ko-fi and Patreon memberships.